Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S. here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays, Season 4, the final season, Episode 16. And as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead and throw down the topics for tonight and pin them in the comments. And I found that I can't put the picture up anymore, so we're not going to see the logo for right now until things are updated on Instagram. But as that's going, y'all let me know as you're coming in how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word. Shouts out to J Craftmatics. Peace and love, my G. What's the word? What's the word? Welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays. Win here, speaking, getting things all right and set. Much love to my brother from another up in here too, my G. Sergio, I see you with the Riz. Peace and one love, my G. What's the word? What's the word? So, I guess Instagram wanted to update some stuff and forgot the option of at least sharing videos, sharing cover arts or pictures. So, right now, I'm not going to do that. You're just going to see my face full like this until folks join in and all of that. But yes, I appreciate y'all being in here. We are getting very close towards the end of this whole of What's the Word Wednesdays. This is not going to be any more after December 27th. December 27th is the last episode, and this series is over. So please join in, be here with us, celebrate with us. But as we're doing that, we're still going to keep the content and keep the topics going. So we appreciate y'all. Said, wishing you nothing but love, prosperity, and blessings always, brother. Likewise, again, the community, grateful for y'all being here. Grateful for y'all showing the love. So, appreciate it. But as more folks are coming in, just getting ourselves ready. So, for tonight, what's going to be going on, y'all? We're going to be getting into the topics of current events. So, what's happening currently? Then we're going to be speaking about misogyny versus Misandry, really speak on this. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how isms permanently change the culture. Not just temporary, not just ephemerally, which means for a certain amount of time, but permanently. But yeah, y'all. Thank y'all for coming in, doing y'all's thing. But we're going to go ahead and get into this spiel. We're going to do the show song. And then after the show song, we're going to get into these current events. But as y'all are in here, y'all let me know how y'all doing, how y'all feeling, and what's the word? As well as soon enough, you ain't got to worry about me singing this over and over again live. It's going to be a song, so y'all know why and what's the word. It's like this. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Tell them like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Once again, y'all, it's your brother A.D.V.I.S. Peace and one love. We are here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 4, the final season, Episode 16. Shouts out to all those that are in here watching, as well as those who will be watching this later, whether on Instagram, YouTube, or any other social media platform. But if you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to your boy at A.D.V.I.S Speaks. Once again, subscribe to your boy at A.D.V.I.S Speaks because there is more content coming. I actually got some interviews I'm going to be putting up very soon from folks. If you want to be interviewed, holla at your boy. Let me know throughout the DMs, or if not on YouTube's email, all of that stuff. We can get it situated, but show some love. Lastly, we're going to be getting into tonight's topics. We're going to be talking about current events, which right now is going to be the news portion. So if you're not really a fan of listening to the news and knowing what's going on, just take about 20 minutes till we get to, and we'll jump into our next topic, which we're going to be talking about misogyny versus misandry. Very can get heated, but well needed discussion. And then lastly, we're going to talk about, tie it all together, how isms permanently change the culture. And what culture is that? I'm talking about the world culture, also talking about Western culture, different civilizations in that culture. We'll get into it. But with that, y'all, let's go ahead and get into these current events. So I have a couple of topics, or I should say news reports pulled up, and I'm going to get through those. If y'all have any news that you'll like to share, whether if it's news that's out in the media or just even good news that's happened for yourself, please put it down in the comments. Let me know what's good. We got to see this news. We got to feel this news. So appreciate you. Saying the bird is the word. LOL. Upset at the war. Yeah. I was hearing a little bit about that too. I heard about the bombing and how 500 plus civilians were killed. It's very tragic, of course, to end up seeing. At the same time, being able to fathom that, there's a lot of ills in this world that needs to be attended to, and so little time. But let's go ahead and get to this first article as we're doing that. But please share them down if you got more topics and more things to discuss news-wise. So, first one I got comes from Newsweek, and the headline reads, "How U.S. could respond if Russia shoots down satellites." So, on one side, we got the Palestinian and the whole Iraq, all that back and forth is happening. But then on this other side, we got Russia making their moves. Last few weeks we talked about nuclear war, or these are the signs of World War III and things of that sort. But in this article, it's talking about how U.S. could respond if Russia shoots down satellites. So 3 paragraphs of this, and then we're out. So article reads, the chief of the U.S. Space Force has outlined how Washington could respond if Moscow shoot down Western commercial satellites. General Chance Salzman said at a press conference in Hawaii on September 20th that U.S. military space capabilities are under threat from nations like China, Russia, and outlined how Washington could respond should Moscow attack SpaceX's Starlink broadcast network, which Ukraine uses for internet connectivity in Russia's full-scale invasion, Ars Technica reported. And speaking of that, we even still got, of course, Russia and Ukraine still going on. So there's numerous wars, and there's even some that we don't even know that is happening and going on worldwide. These are just the ones that are broadcasted. So continuing, he was responding to questions from reporters about threats made by Russia in October of 2022. So this was last year, that the country could down Western commercial satellites should they be used to assist Ukraine in the war. So they just said what is being used for. It's used for Ukrainians to use those satellites for internet connectivity. Now, I'm going to say this name, Konstantin V. I'm not going to say the rest. This is the deputy director of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Non-Proliferation and Arms Control Department. What a lengthy sentence, or even title. Said last October that the use of commercial infrastructure elements in outer space for military purposes by U.S. constituents as extremely dangerous trend. So, it seems, from what I'm seeing, because we also got to read through the lines with this stuff, is that there's a lot of testing of waters, whether it comes to on the U.S. side, on Russia's side, Ukraine, as well as you got, I can't even say testing the waters over what happened with, Palestine and all of that going back and forth in Gaza. That's already been done, but there's much need of people trying to step and put their foot where they need to. But if you want to read more about this article again comes from Newsweek, and the headline reads, how U.S. could respond if Russia shoots down satellites. Didn't even realize Ukraine, Russia was still going on. Yes, it is still happening. Still happening. There's updates still going on. And the last time, or one of the first times I heard about the Russia and Ukraine war, I was working in a factory, and that was what, almost a year and a half, if not ago. So it's still it's there. It's basically older than some kids being born today, as well as 1 year olds. So yes. All right, next article I have for y'all comes from Daily Mail, and the headline reads, "Pro-Palestinian protesters invade the Capitol. More than 100 arrested." Again, we got a lot more of this going on. Great thing about stuff like this being in the media, it brings it to attention, but at the same time, not all of the facts are outlined. So, people got to speak their parts of those facts and not opinions. With that being said, again, 3 paragraphs and we're out. And this one is picture by picture, but article reads, "Pro-Palestinian protesters are taking over the U.S. Capitol as hundreds demand a ceasefire between Hamas terrorists in Gaza and Israel. The demonstration comes a day after a bombing of a hospital in Gaza kills at least 500 Palestinians." So as I was speaking about earlier. The protesters, dressed in black shirts that read, "Jews say ceasefire now," and "Not in our name," took over a large rotunda in the Cannon House office building. The demonstrators held posters with messages like "Let Gaza live" and "Mourn the dead" and "Fight like hell for the living." I would show the pictures and stuff, but it's a slideshow type thing, and I'm not going to flip the camera this way, but just giving y'all the pieces there. So, Capitol Police made 100 arrests as the group got louder and more disruptive with chants and singing. They cut off public access to the Capitol complex as swarms of angry Palestinian advocates flooded the Cannon building. Capitol Police said of the mass arrest, "We warned the protesters to stop demonstrating, and when they did not comply, we began arresting them." So I'm not going to keep going further on into this. It is a slideshow piece on here, but if y'all want to read more or look more through this slideshow, it's a 9-slide type show. The article comes from Daily Mail, and the headline reads, "Pro-Palestinian protesters invade the Capitol. More than 100 arrested." So, like I said, heated everywhere right now. I shouldn't even say necessarily everywhere, but there are a few hot spots that's happening right now. But the very important thing for all of us to make sure or even know about these hot spots, on top of that, is to make sure that we are getting the well-rounded story and not just one-sided perspective. I'd rather get 4, 5, 6 different parts of the story to see if anything aligns, while at the same time, when there's wars, there are also legislation and laws being passed. I'm not always going to say I'm the best of always seeing and knowing all the stuff that is happening and going on, or I'm always like, "Ooh, let's look up and see what laws they're trying to pass." But I notice every time that there's some type of war or there's some type of conflict happening between countries, it is roughly around the time where not only elections are happening, but when laws are different, bills are coming to the eye of all of us. So that's just my perspective. Think about it. But we still in there. Next article comes from U.S. News and World Report. And again, I just look at the articles again. That catches my eye. I don't think of anything else. The title gets me. We'll talk about it. If the picture gets me, we'll talk about it. The content, we'll talk about it. But this article comes from the U.S. News and World Report. Title reads, "Places the U.S. government warns not to travel right now." So I'm only going to talk about the spots and speak about specifically what. So I'm going to just pop out a few. I'm going to read the first two paragraphs, and then I'm just going to speak out the places they say right now there's a travel advisory for. Article reads, global conflicts, as we've been speaking about right now, and climate crises ranging from a series of coups across Africa. See, I didn't even know that's going on. There's a lot of coups going on in Africa. I'm going to have to look this up. To earthquakes and floods in catastrophic prone countries have affected international travel patterns in recent months. Still, international tourism arrivals could reach 85 to about 95% of pre-pandemic levels in 2023, according to the World Tourism Organization. But some destinations warrant more caution than others. So, the ones that they're saying there should be some more caution around are a few as follows. One, they say Afghanistan. Another one, Belarus, if I'm saying that right. Another place, Burkina Faso. I actually want to go visit Burkina Faso. Now I gotta chill. The Central African Republic. Myanmar, which formerly was known as Burma. Gaza, which you just spoke about what happened in Gaza, for sure, is definitely not safe right now as it goes. Haiti, Iran, and then another one they have on here is Iraq. A lot of this happening really around the Middle East, African, that borderline. Like I'm like looking over this way because I got a map. This one behind me is the U.S. map. I should actually put the world map here instead of the U.S. map and then go from over there. But that area right now is a hot spot from what this is saying. So for those folks who's really thinking about trying to go either to the motherland, or I should say Africa, for other people their motherlands is other spaces, but trying to go to Africa may not be the best right now, especially also trying to go to the Middle East. That is the advisory, at least right now, from the U.S. But if you want to read more in this report about why for those particular places, again, this article comes from U.S. News and World Report, and the headline reads, places the U.S. government warns not to travel right now. And I'm actually want to keep that one up so I can look into, again, that the coups that's going on in Africa. Right. Now this one's for my Californians. Again, we was talking about, okay, what are the legislations and these different laws that are being passed. I know about the one that shouts out to Kundan, probably be on here later, is we're going to be talking about I think it was the Assembly bill, which was, I think it was for the 403. I may be wrong on the numbers, but it was the bill talking about the different caste systems and making that a thing. Shouts out to Chris. Peace and love. What's going on, Chris? What's the word? Shouts out to Chairman Dallas. What's good, my G? What's the word? But there's a lot of bills being passed in California right now. But let's speak on this one. This one comes from, the article comes from, I should say, Jacobin. And the headline reads, California just passed the first state social housing legislation in the U.S. So let's see what this legislation is about and what's happening with it. So again, 3 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, on October 7th, so that's a couple weeks now, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law Senate Bill 555. You can get your 555 deal here. The Stable Affordable Housing Act of 2023. The legislation commits the state of California to producing a study on the prospects for creating a robust sector of social housing that offers below market rent, affordable housing to households of all income levels who are unable to afford market rent, and that is permanently shielded from the speculative market. So, in short, talk about providing affordable housing. How long, at least some of us in California, have been talking about the rising prices? I've had friends and family move out of California because of that's the case, because rent control, there hasn't been no rent control, so everything continues just to rise with no laws put in place or legislation put in place to combat that. A lot of development happening in different parts of other cities and making folks have to end up moving out because of the fact that they can't afford the rising prices. So now California is going to be doing this. We'll see what they will truly do with this. I will say I'm very skeptical, but let's give it some time. So SB 555 embeds a definition of social housing in state law and sets in motion a public process to identify tools that help achieve the state's goal for lower and moderate income housing by creating social housing through both new production and preservation of existing units. The resulting California social housing study, so there's going to be a study, to be completed in 2026, so we'll see what happens in the 3 years, will include recommendations to the state legislator for social housing at the scale need. So I'm not going to read any more further into it, but just know this has only been passed right now in California. There's probably going to be more in other different places. But if you want to read more about this law being passed, the article comes from Jacob Ben, and the headline reads, California just passed the first state social housing legislation in the U.S. If you want to read more. All right, y'all, let me look at y'all comments. Y'all are going up in here in the comments. I feel it. Yeah, said moved out and came right back. Just telling you. Oh, God. Bird feed to the people. They did that in NY. More money to the rich developers. Basically, and I will say this comment like I've said it before. The U.S. is a business, and those who own and have small businesses benefit from this business model. So even though this is supposed to help and support, especially with the building of families and keeping Americans or Californians, this is supposed to help with that. But if you don't own a business, at this point, it's becoming more detrimental for you to even be here. So that's just my perspective. I can be completely wrong. But yeah, it says 2026. That's too long. I feel you on that. Everywhere I've been looking, it's like 2,000 and you don't even get a refrigerator or a stove. Yeah, all the amenities are just about out. You're an independent and hardworking person, everybody. You independent, you do your thing, so you should be able to afford all of these amenities on your own. You don't need any of this. You don't have to worry about it. So pay us what you owe. It's ridiculous. Just regulate the market to not increase above a certain percent, just like rent. It will not be advantageous for those folks who are actually cashing in on the market to do so. So that's why. Realistically, logically, and morally, that would make sense. But do everybody care about that? No. No. Not at all. Right. Last one I got for y'all, and then I'm going to just read some topics or headlines from NPR. I am not affiliated with any of that, but still just different places to get news, not just only one place. Don't always rely on one resource or one source of information for a lot of things. But last one I got for y'all. This article comes from Fortune, and the headline reads, a new possible explanation for long COVID could lead to a simple treatment for some patients. So previously, we were speaking about the effects of long COVID. They've been doing the studies and finding out more about how it has an effect on folks. I know way back when I did catch a glimpse of it, I was sick myself, but I had food poisoning, and then after that, my immune system was down. So I diagnosed myself, but I haven't necessarily seen the symptoms within myself. But for other folks, this has been an impact on them. So let's look through Let's see. And again, 3 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads: the neurologic long COVID symptoms of some patients, like brain fog, and memory loss, may be caused by lingering virus in the gut of all places. That's according to a new study by University of Pennsylvania researchers that published Monday in the journal Cell. Researchers say the findings could lead to a treatment for a disease that so far has none. The idea of the SARS-CoV-2, so folks who don't know, for COVID, the technical name is SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV-2, or any coronavirus lingering in the body after acute infection in what is called a viral reservoir. A viral reservoir. Sometimes referring to the popular press as viral ghost is not new. In fact, it has been proven to occur when some speculating that viral reservoirs are responsible for long COVID symptoms in at least some cases. Other mechanisms behind long COVID are thought to include chronic inflammation, increased prevalence of blood clots, and autonomic dysfunction, all triggered by the virus. Let's see. While it may seem logical that the neurologic long COVID symptoms like brain fog, memory loss, and depression are caused by the presence of virus in the brain, researchers in Pennsylvania proposed a different theory. That virus lingering in the gut causes such symptoms in a roundabout way. So it is not the main predicator, but it is doing it in a roundabout fashion. But I'm not going to say too much more on this. There's a little bit past on it if you want to know what long COVID is. Things of that sort. There's also a video that they have here that's breaking it down and talking about it. But if you want to know about that, the article comes from Fortune, and the headline reads, a new possible explanation for long COVID could lead to a simple treatment for some patients. So we will see about that, y'all. But if y'all got some comments, please, I see I'm looking through. We finishing up. If y'all have any other articles or news to share, please throw it down in the comments. I highly appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for rocking and really doing your thing with it. So I'm going to just read some headlines from NPR.org. Again, from NPR.org. Don't let this just be your only source. Use many sources, but here we are. So here's the available evidence of what happened at Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza. It's one of them. Saying Leonard Allen Keir, freed after a wrongful conviction, is shot dead in a traffic stop. My goodness. A new study points to a key window of opportunity to save Greenland's ice sheets. For my folks to know the difference between Iceland and Greenland, one of it's very funny. It's ironic. Iceland is the one that has a lot of the pastures in green, and Greenland is the one that has all the ice. Hilarious. Another one. The governor tried banning guns in Albuquerque. The public health emergencies continue. So there's a lot going on, I guess, in Albuquerque. We have people doing holiday stuff, but that's more Halloween stuff. For survivors of the Monterey Park shooting, a resiliency center mends the body and spirit. I don't know what that one was ended up being, but that's an interesting one. The Biden admin's humanitarian parole program is a year old, but migrants still wait to be accepted. And again, there's a lot more. I'm not going to keep reading all of them, but if you want some more news, why that guy look like Eminem right when I looked at that? But if you want to read more news, you can go to npr.org, npr.org. But with that, y'all, that's all the news that I got. If y'all have any others, even while we're going along, you're more than welcome to drop them in there, speak on them, tell me how you feel, etc., etc., etc. As well as hydrate. Please hydrate. You got to hydrate. And we're going to now move to the next topic. But before we do so, got to give y'all the disclaimer. So here it is. Disclaimer. As much as I appreciate y'all coming in, sharing your thoughts, putting it down in the comments, and be giving of your time, and I like the interaction. I would love to see your faces on the screen and interact with you and build with you that way. So this is your opportunity to jump on and do so. If you do not feel comfortable doing so, it's okay. You can stay in the comments. Everything's all well and fine. If you are comfortable with being on, just know that you will, and this is a live, it will be saved and put on different social media. So that means you will waive your right of any type of interaction in those particular sorts. So if you're comfortable with that, come join. If not, it's all good. We stay here in the comments and we're going to keep the conversation rolling. And that was a disclaimer. I should come up with a little jingle with it too, but now we all good. So going into the next topic, which next topic I've hinted at in previous topics when we're talking about culture, we're talking about the society and the pros and cons and downfalls of society. This one is very relevant because we always speak, or I should say a number of people always speak one-sided arguments or one-sided perspectives without looking at the other side, which I know there can be multiple. But today we're still looking at it in a binary way. But today, the next topic that we're getting into, we're going to be talking about misogyny versus misandry. And we're going to look at the differences. For my folks that don't know which is which, put it down in the comments. Try your best. When you hear the word misogyny, what's the first things that come into mind? You put them down in the comments. I'm going to read the dictionary definitions that I found. Just put it down in the comments for misogyny. And then once you all figure that one out too, take some time, put down in the comments when you hear the word misandry, what comes to mind? Put that as well down in the comments. And I see you over there. I see you over there on Instagram. I see you over there on all other different platforms. I see y'all putting it down, YouTube. Write it down. You just staring? Write it down right now. Write it down. Right. With that being said, I see I got. And then I'll start reading off the definitions of these ones and getting into this. So, all right. I have my first. Yo.
Hey,
What's
how's
going
it
on,
going? What's
Chris?
the
You
word?
tell me what's the
What's
word?
the word?
You
I had
hear me?
to wait. My phone is glitch. There we go. It's glitching, so we may have some mic checks. 1 2 1 2.
You're good for right
Going on.
now. Oh,
All right, great. I had to hop in for this one. I'm excited. Let's break out that Webster.
all right, let's do it. Why? Because it just is. I appreciate you putting what you got down, and we're going to get into it so then you'll have an idea because of the fact that we have a lot of words that people use
And they
and
don't
they
know.
decide, again, yeah, they don't know what it means. They just throw it out there because of the fact that it's trending
Right,
and that
right,
many people are using it. And
right.
you look like a social justice warrior while at the same time
We're
that you really care about the issue. What you was about to say, Chris, go for it.
isn't that called like they use buzzwords? You know, those
Yes.
are words that are just like thrown out there but not explained.
Yes.
So people just hear it once and they take it for contextual definitions, but not the literal definitions. So
Yes.
then you have a mix of understandings.
As well as how would you even apply it to real world situations?
Right.
So you can say the
Correct.
word, but
Mm-hmm.
then you don't know how you wouldn't be able to give a proper example. You can just be like, oh yeah, because they hate this. And to some extent, you can be correct, but specifically about what? Because
Right. Depending on the context and the connotation in which it's used, but still
Yes.
not getting the definition, the literal
Shots.
definition.
Exactly. And shouts out to the brother lyrics, which he likes to use,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the circumstances which thereof. So the circumstances
Mm-hmm.
which thereof, we figure out what it is. But I've been stalling. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna read both of them and you'll get the difference. So right now we had down there, it says misogyny. It says acting like women ain't ish. That's one of the things. So we got there. And then we got misandry. Have no idea. Could you send me? Okay. We'll see what happens. We'll try one more
Alrighty.
time,
Yep.
Dallas. Give me a quick second.
Hey,
So let's get it.
Dallas.
Misogyny. Misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
It's a noun. And what they have for misogyny, I might even read the etymology because it's giving me the roots down here
Mm-hmm.
too. So misogyny is a noun. It says hatred of, aversion to, or prejudice against women.
Women.
They also have
Mm-hmm.
another definition. It says also something such as speech or behavior that reflects and fosters misogyny, which I have a problem with that definition. Don't use the
Me
word
too.
to define the word. Don't
That's what
use
I
the
was.
word to define the word.
That's what I was gonna say too. I was like, yeah, in like fifth grade or whatever, I had a teacher. She was like, yeah, no, you can't use the word to describe, to define the word, because all
Exactly.
you're doing is just repeating the word. You gave the person nothing.
That is true. So on my way from the hospital. Dallas, are you there?
Oh,
Before I kick you out.
oh. I hope
Say that
people
one
are
more
okay.
time again.
All
Oh
right.
no.
You're there. Just making sure that you're there. Yeah, Notes. Notes he'll fill y'all in. But yeah, hope you're doing
Are
well,
you
my G. I appreciate
okay,
you hopping
Notes?
on. Yes.
Hey, Dallas.
I
But
was say,
right
y'all
now.
confused. I know I ain't
What?
got.
What is it? The full beard? Ah, he's growing up.
Just hear me out. Hear me out. I don't have a haircut right now, but I have one. I got a barber appointment this weekend, so I'm locking in. My birthday coming up, so we got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And
Y'all keep speaking real quick. I'll be right back. I heard something. Be right back.
okay,
Keep going.
Okay.
super
No.
super excited though, man. And Notes, brother, I hope you doing okay, man. I heard, and yeah, man. Anybody that want to get locked in with us right now, for those who don't know me, my name is Chairman Dallas, and excuse me. If you want to get locked in, I got a free live session this weekend. I'm going to be showing people what it is that we do and how we help multiple families become financially free. But how you doing, Chris? I heard you say what's up. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. I like the beard. You're looking handsome.
Hey,
It looks good.
hey, I'm getting mixed reviews, Billy, but it's coming off. It's coming off.
That's growth. There's nothing wrong with showing your age. That beard, you deserve that. That takes
My boy
time.
over here looking like
Looking
Wolverine,
grown.
aka looking like he a lumberjack ready to go cut some wood, push down these trees. You know, a man's man. We just need some overalls and everything, and we
Hey,
good to go.
Uh-oh. Are you tying into Misandry?
Oh, we about to get there. Don't worry. Don't worry. So let me remind y'all, misogyny is the hatred of, aversion to, or prejudice against women. So that is misogyny. Where they're saying it's rooted, I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of it. Misogyny may be distinguished from the closely related word sexism, which signifies discrimination based on sex. Although it's most frequently referred to discrimination against women, it
Mm-hmm.
also carries the meaning behavior, conditions, or attitudes that foster stereotypes of social roles based upon sex. Now that I will actually combat against because of the fact that
It goes
that's
both
how
ways.
we've been struck.
It goes
So
both
it
ways.
can be,
Yeah.
it's because of the structure. So we can't
Mm-hmm.
really mostly say like, oh yeah, it's because of the, and because
Mm-hmm.
also the other word I want to throw into all of this while we're getting into it, I want to throw double standard into there later, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
continue on so y'all can get the difference now. So we got the understanding, or at least understanding of what misogyny is. Again, it's the hatred is also the aversion as well as prejudice against women. Now, when it comes to misandry,
Can you
it's
guess?
basically the opposite. It's basically the opposite. Instead of women, it's the flip side. So it's the hatred of men, it's the aversion to, as well as is the prejudice towards men. And to be honest with you, the funny thing is, when I see it here on Webster's, Chris, that's all it is. It just says hatred of men. That's it. That's all it says.
That's all.
That's all it says.
Webster?
Look,
Dang,
I
it's
have
the
to take
first
it.
time
Look, I
Webster
have to
let me
take it
down.
off. I have to take it off just so you can see.
Oh my God. Come on, Webster.
A hatred of men. That's it.
So now we gotta go to Google definitions? Ew.
So I'm about to actually pop on real quick, and I'm going to go into my other favorite dictionary, which is the free dictionary, because it gives a few different ones. But
Oh, I thought you were gonna go Oxford. Like, let's get real. Let's get real.
Oxford can chill. But if I want the end all be all of dictionaries, I'm gonna
You
go
just got
to
a
the
free
online
dictionary.
etymology. I'm gonna go to the online etymology because that's the study of the words. But
Mm-hmm.
here on the free dictionary for misandry, it says hatred or mistrust of men is another one.
Interesting. They added the mistrust part.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
which is very hard and loosely tied. So then again, we're
Right.
going to get into to me how some of these definitions are troublesome, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll keep going. Another one says hatred of men. That's it. And then the last one says, I know, it's just like straight up, they hate men. That's it. That's it.
Damn.
Nothing else.
Can't catch a
Um,
break.
Yes. And then the last one says an extreme. So, keyword
Mm-hmm.
extreme dislike
Extreme.
of males, frequently
Okay.
based upon unhappy experiences or upbringing.
Wait, they lost me on that second part, but I was rocking with it, and then it went left.
Again,
Okay, they made it they personalized it. So I guess that's where context, where we were talking earlier, context, regurgitation based off of either context, connotation, but not. I didn't get a definitive definition from that because I feel like not I feel we know it is the exact opposite of misogyny. So
yes.
wouldn't the definitions pair, as in wouldn't they mirror?
The reason why I'm giving y'all this face is because of the
Yeah.
fact that, again, especially during this day and age, that
Right.
everything is supposed to be equal equality. All of this stuff is supposed to
Equity,
be
not
happening.
equality. We
I'm
know it's not
even
happening. Okay.
I'm
I'm
again.
moving too fast. I'm moving
No,
too fast.
you good.
I'm
You
excited about
good.
this topic.
You good. That's why I'm glad that you hopped on, so it wouldn't just be me as a man who can
Right.
be seen, if not misogynistic, talking about how you gonna talk about misogyny stuff. You gonna be biased. Well, I'm glad that we got different perspectives. That's why I do it on purpose. I know how to be
That's
balanced,
low. That's low
but
key
come
why
on.
I hopped in. I was like, let me see where's all the ladies at?
Yeah. But with that being said, why do we want to speak on these? Part of the reason we've already talked about first, it's being very used, is very trendy buzzwords within society, and I
Mm-hmm.
want us to speak on it, so then after that we can get the at least a better understanding and gist of what it means, how it's used, how you see
Right.
how loosely these definitions are actually tying to the use of them, and contextually why it's important and how it can be damaging at the same time.
Context matters.
It really does. So
Mm-hmm.
I know, Chris, that you got some stuff. So if you have anything that's popping in your head right now, go for it, and we'll align it as we move along.
I forgot to give you a hard time at the beginning. I was gonna make a joke because you have on there misogyny versus misandry, and I'm like, you're a part of the problem. Why are they competing?
Oh yeah, of
You
course.
could have said and
It's
you could have said and, but give me a hard time.
of course. I mean, everything in life right now, everybody's competing, is competitive, and all of that's happening. And guess what? It creates a clash, and that's what's happening right now. A clash
Right
of
now,
culture.
yeah.
It's
Oh
such a
my
clash
gosh,
of
it's
culture.
happening to the point where
It's
people
too
are
much.
losing their lives over it. Um, and I think it's more so of the contextual understanding and lack of um, the 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 literal definition why the word was even had to come about. You
Yes.
know, not looking at historical factors that come into
Yeah.
play because words are created by us. We create words.
Mm-hmm.
So this word had to come up for a reason. There were events like, what do we call this situation? What is it called when this
Yeah.
experience happens? And one thing I thought you were going to say when we were going over when we were going over misogyny, thought you were going
Yeah.
to bring up the patriarchy because those are heavily linked. I know you said what did you say, double standard,
Yes.
but you also want to something else that's really linked is patriarchy, and then you have to like dissect and understand, well, what is the patriarchy and why does that what does that have to do with both of these words? Well,
Yeah.
why are men hated, quote unquote, from their definition, and why is there a hatred or a not liking? I think with misogyny, it was like 3 lines worth at least of definition. Like it said not just hatred, but it was like other things
It's
like
like the
dislike
hatred
of
of,
movement,
the
hatred,
aversion,
yeah,
and the
like pushback
prejudice
of
of women.
women.
Yes.
Exactly. And how do they all relate to each other?
Yeah.
How are they tying in to each other? So I really thought you were gonna bring that word in
No,
into
I'm glad.
play.
I haven't, again, I didn't even touch on much anything because I was like, I know you had something. Because for me, to be honest with you, I mean, it is nice to be able to have not only multiple perspectives, but to learn yourself. Because I'm not going to talk about like I know fully about the patriarchy. Because I'll be honest with you, that that word to me also gets very misused.
It's
And
a
when I mean by
buzzword.
it gets very misused. And when I
Mm-hmm.
look it up, it is, and I'll even just give y'all the definition now so I can have a better understanding of it. When you said patriarchy, the next thing I think of too is matriarchy. We cannot speak about one side of the coin and not speak on the other side of the
Right.
coin, because
Right.
it's not just one-sided coin. I don't go to the store and literally just only have a heads on my 50-cent coin. There's a heads and a
Exactly.
tails. So
Exactly. But we've
so
been so removed we have not been in a matriarchal society for centuries now. So that's why patriarchy is the big buzzword that it is now. It's because it's the current structure and it's been the current structure. I don't
well,
even think I don't
go
even
ahead.
think most people even remember unless you are directly from like outside of the United States and you've lived in other countries that still practice a matriarchal society. But
I'm gonna tell you
speaking
this.
only from an American perspective, yeah, we have not been in a matriarchal society for a while.
I'll say this. At a if we saying at a broad standpoint, yes. But at a as an individual standpoint, again, I'm not gonna say like my opinion is the best and things all of that sort. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna say this: I lived under a patriarchal structure. I've never lived under
You meant
I'm sorry, not
matriarchal,
patriarchal,
but that's
matriarchal structure, not a patriarchal when it comes to, again, individual. When you
within
talking
the
about at as a
home.
whole,
Yeah,
is a different story. So when people think of it, the
there's
first
different
things for
levels.
me, yeah,
Yeah.
when I think of matriarchal and I think of patriarchal, all it has to do with the dad or the father figure or the man is the head of the household and the family. And on the flip side, a woman,
Mm-hmm.
matriarchal, woman is the head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, again, for me in shortened terms when I think of it individually. Now,
Right.
definition
Right.
terms, definition terms from Webster is going to tell you this. So patriarchy is a noun. First definition says social organization marked by the supremacy of the
Mm-hmm.
father in the clan or family. The legal dependence of wives and children, and the reckoning of descent and inheritance in the male line. Broadly, it says controlled by men of disproportionately large shares of power. Second one, a
Mm-hmm.
society or institution organized according to the principles or practice of patriarchy. Again, why are we
Right.
using the word to define the
Define the
word?
word.
Goodness. All right,
Right.
matriarchy. Okay, all right, good. Okay, the second one is in line, but the first one, again. All right, so the first definition for it says a family, group, or
Uh-huh.
state governed by a matriarch.
Big government. Yep. So when I
Second one,
think
go ahead.
patriarchy, I think when I'm speaking of like government systems. When I'm saying
Yeah,
systems, like the thing that surrounds us, that we're like the system that we're in, because it is going to change between how people run their households is how they run their households, but on like a grand scale, um, the world at large, or the society at large that we live in this country specifically, is heavily dominated by men. Um, and like, I like the word that you used, the supremacy, because it's the holding on to power. That's what like supremacy is like. To dominate. Supremacy is like to dominate. But we can look that word up more in detail, accurate
yeah.
definition. But yes, the
This would
goal.
be a definition filled setup, but I do want to
Mm-hmm.
address why, because in the comments, and then continue it going, because I got my own threads back and forth with also these more of these
The
definitions and
comments.
fleshing them out. But yeah, so just to point out that people say people of color cannot be racist because it's tied to power. Let's put that into the idea of misogyny and misandry. Does misandry exist then? At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, the definition, I'm gonna just let you know, off rip, the definition
Yes.
doesn't even have really instances of saying power besides the patriarchy. And you just
Mm-hmm.
said it. Then I go to matriarchy. The only thing
Mm-hmm.
that else it says a system of social organization in which descent and inheritance are traced through the feminine or female line. This is
Has
what
nothing to
I'm
do with
noticing.
power. Yep. I'm with you.
So what I'm seeing there is literally not only a misappropriation of words being used, but even within a lot of the definitions too. Again, there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be bias. There's going to be real world use,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not going to
Yep.
always have stats and everything tailored to this. So to answer your question, honestly, yes, there's still going to be a misandry because one cannot exist without the other, because then we would not be able to fully describe it. But in terms of saying, when it comes to the thing of power being tied, from the
Mm-hmm.
definition wise, no, because they're saying that there's not power. The other one's just talking about there's a line that's continuing to be passed down. The other one doesn't end up saying the word supremacy, as well as having a large share of power, because that's from
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy, at least in this
And
definition.
that exhibits both misandry and misogyny in all in that definition, because it's pointing out power only when to describe the patriarchy, which is misogyny, having power over women,
Yeah,
having power over the matriarchy. And then it's also showing misandry, because then it's saying then it's also in the same, it's saying that this is the only thing that the patriarchy can be. This kind of makes sense. Like it's only a power is like only associated with man.
got you, got you. Which I do want to go, and we're gonna still talk more into, because there's some misconceptions I want to speak on, while at the same time, of course, addressing what is truly there. But you got another one here that says people of color are matriarchal at home, insert colonialism, and then we try and mimic the white patriarchy. And because of the reason why that's the case is because our culture was stripped. So later on, we get to the last topic. That's where I'm going to be talking. We'll talk more of how that all layers together. But the reason why that's the case is because of the fact that I'll just say, and hence right now, is slavery. That's the whole thing. It messed up the family structure. So and of course, I'm not going to only say slavery, but there's also other factors that came later on down the line that I could keep reiterating. There's a list of things of roadblocks that have had an impact on the reason why, at least you say people of color. I'm only going to speak on my experience, especially as Black people. Why the grandma, mama, and great grandmothers were the head of the households, and it's because of these other influencers or influences that have happened throughout centuries. So I appreciate that still. And then
sample size as well, because not all, even if we dissect even deeper, people of color down to Black folk, not all Black households are matriarchal. So
I will say this. That's true, but there is a vast majority. And the one statistic that actually still for me says that it is, and it changes. Again, each year we get in different census and all of that. We still waiting for the, I guess, more sense for 2020 census. I don't know. I haven't even seen all that data. I got to check it. But as of right now, I go to blackstatistics.com. They say roughly around 70% of Black households, at least within the U.S., are single mothers. So in that hints, that's already saying that it's matriarchal. Am I saying that there's not any other factors that impact that? Of course not. There definitely is. But you still see the whole agenda at whole of why that becomes the case. And I will get some pushback on, I'll get some pushback on this, but I'm going to end up saying that regardless. There's also other statistics that show that, and then it makes sense that this is not a thriving situation for the kids, because what ends up happening is it perpetuates the cycle over and over again of not only dysfunction, but how it looks to create a family. So then this continues to go on and on and on. And no disrespect to some of the women, I'll be honest with you. As much as I love my mom, as much as I can say I love my grandma, everybody else, and they've definitely helped me become who I am. There's a lot of things that I really missed out on, and I had to learn the hard way of what it meant to be, what it is still meant to be a man living now. And they weren't able to teach me that. And that's not their fault. While at the same time, I know I can't just talk about it and say, okay, where's my dad? In this particular case, I can definitely say that my dad was not a great portion in the life. I'm not going to say he's a bad man, but he was just gone. I just didn't have anything from him. But then we got to also talk about what about the fathers that's trying to be in their kids' life, and there's having an issue between there where the mom is preventing that from happening, and then the dad is, okay, what am I supposed to do? So there is a multitude of different realities for people. But when we talking about in general, we're trying to get a consensus of why then, if this is the case, why? But going back into patriarchy, matriarchy, misogyny, and misandry, reason why I really want to touch on these topics too is because as we're moving in a society where we are now, it's still, to me, even if people are not saying it, there's a big gender battle still happening. And because we still have this gender battle still going on and happening, what's falling to the wayside is healthy relationship building.
True.
As well as later on, I'll talk about the culture aspect of it. But because we're not building relationships with each other, we are very skeptical as well as very worried of each other. We start to lose out on and practice the supposed American values, which, to be honest with y'all, I don't even know what they are anymore, besides consumerism being one of the values.
Consume.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Food is not a
that's an American value. Said food is not even a basic right.
Yeah, that's what they voted on.
Yeah. It said because they jailed a whole generation of black men. Thank you, Rockefeller drug laws. Yeah, that's only
Yeah.
a half aspect of it, but yeah, we'll get into that later. Look, that's one area that I can say I'm a bit more knowledgeable in. I'm not fully knowledgeable, but I have so many books here that I have not yet to read, but they have this information in there, as well as there's a lot of scholars that I've listened to that have already spoken about these topics. So that's why I know about it, especially when it comes to the black experience, especially being a black male, black man,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So we got you on those parts.
So
But
many documentaries as well.
yes, yes. And it's important to get that information out there and to, again, use multiple other sources, so then we know that this is just not only a small instance or just only a single instance. This has been happening in multitudes and many different stories. So then we know it's just not me, it's we. But yeah, it says huge imbalance for sure. Said liberalism. Liberalism, look, again, we're gonna get all these isms, but that's gonna be on the next one in a bit. But I'm telling y'all, yes, this is all having an impact. But again, misogyny and misandry, I wanna look back especially at the word, because Chris was saying it earlier about the word supremacy. I've
Mm-hmm.
always still had my gripes with the word supremacy, being that especially how we want to, again, the intent on describing it and really what it truly looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So one example for me when I'm thinking about supremacy and what it looks like, first one comes to mind, of course, is white supremacy.
Right.
To me, I wouldn't even really put that word next to even white supremacy in this particular case, because when you think about someone being supreme, that means like ruling over, in a sense of that they have vested you in the skills of this, and that, and a third. And when I think
Right.
about how you were gained
Mm-hmm.
supremacy, you are already, in some places already, you innately or naturally born with that. You don't go about trying to have to show people that you are supreme. It is already tailored into you that you are.
It's interesting that that word came up in the definition for patriarchy, because I've been watching a lot of just random documentaries. So right now I'm learning about like the food that created that helped create this country, and the
Yes.
consumerism, and they use that word a lot when it comes to the different I think it was the race to make the best cereal. They use that word supremacy a lot. There's one of the hosts who uses that word to describe the race.
Yes.
When someone would come up with an idea, and how it was like very important on how quickly they were able to their their recipes or whatever, so that they can get it out, so that they can own
Yo,
the
send
Yeah.
me your
supremacy.
number. Go ahead, my bad.
No worries. And whatever like food, whatever type of food it was, so like the cereal race, or like the canned food race, or
Yeah.
to be supreme. But that's in the sense of like capitalism, not
Yes.
in the context of what we're talking about. But that
Yes.
word is used a lot when it comes to structures, or it comes up a lot, other than like just in terms of like you
She
said,
left.
race is the first thing that comes. Race is the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to my mind. But then hearing it over and over again in this documentary, I was like, let me expand a little bit more on like
Yeah.
the context of this word, because it seems to be
Yes.
used a lot. It's a buzzword. It is a buzzword for us.
Yes. And for those folks, again, I know Dallas is going to have something. We'll see him when he comes back. But I pulled up the definition just because this is a definition filled night in live, y'all. So supremacy, Webster's again. It says the quality or state of being supreme.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, it says especially a position of unquestioned authority,
Mm,
dominance, or influence. So
okay.
that's where I have, of course, my reasoning of why I wouldn't even think that white supremacy in that particular state is because it says unquestioned. We question this
Unquestioned.
all
We
the
know that.
time. This is a structure that if we really did what we needed to do, this will fall very quickly. But again, we decide to let this continue itself on. But the other one says ultimate authority or power. In this particular case, the example says belief in the supremacy of God.
Okay. They got a little religious with that.
Yes. I'm not
Okay.
surprised. I mean, there's a multitude of all those definite. It's again, there will be no concise and one way to describe one word. There's multiple ways
Mm-hmm.
to continue to describe a word. So that's why we have all scattered the way that we are, is because we all have different ideas of it. But that's why we shed light on this stuff, so we'll know where we're going. But again, revamping back to patriarchy, supremacy in the way of domineering, or
Yep.
supremacy in the way of how the structure was created.
Mm, but isn't the structure created through dominance,
Not necessarily.
or is that the goal? I guess it's getting a little too philosophical. Sorry.
No. That's perfect. The reason why I'm wanting to question that is, I mean, it is of course all the above, but the first portion of it is, I like to always bring it back to the intention.
Yes.
Initially, especially with the U.S., a lot of this stuff, of
Right.
course, is because of the dominance. But when we think of other patriarchal societies, it's more so to build the society in itself. There are stats as well as articles that speak on, again, when we talk about the gender roles and breaking down who has what, when, and where, and realizing what naturally works for, who and what. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of the times, the jobs that we have, or the positions that we put ourselves in, ultimately speaks back to how we naturally end up in our roles. The reason why a lot of the
Right.
structure, reason why a lot of the structure it is in other patriarchal companies, not companies, but countries, and we're going to stay away from the U.S. real quick, is because of the fact that men in those patriarchal societies have the strength, and they are put in that state and ability to be the leader, to lead, and they have the capability to deal with high amounts of stress. Not saying that, of course, women can do the same thing. No, for real, I'm being serious. I'm being very
Okay.
serious.
So in this hypothetical place, what is this
I
place?
sent it.
What,
When I think of
outside of the
a lot
U.S.?
of
When
patriarchal,
you think of
I'm thinking
which country?
I'm thinking more so in Africa, and there are different tribes that have also matriarchal societies as well as women societies on their own. Again, we don't hear about a lot of this stuff, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is the reason why we have a lot of women who are not in full leadership roles when it comes to a whole tribe and society and stuff is because it comes down to the ability to lead, especially under a lot of stress. Are there women that can do it? Yes, but is that the whole role of every woman, to lead a country, lead a place, and deal with the massive amounts of stress?
Role or desire?
Oh, both. So is it their role, and do they desire it?
Hmm. I have to sit on that one because, again, where are these roles coming from? And I
Oh,
guess
it's,
that's the whole
it's
that's the whole thing. It's like who set, like I don't know. That's why I kind of like where we're going as a society is like defining our own roles and making our own. Because what are these roles? Are they just automatically set? Like because that's how
it's
we've been
nature.
operating.
It's nature. That's what I'm talking. So when I'm getting back to it, it's nature and
Okay,
thinking of the
but
natural
you're
roles
talking
and
about
sets.
handling stress
Yeah,
as
handling
as
stress in a
human as
sense.
mm, I don't know if that's nature because then you can get into the amount of stress that women encounter and we have to handle on a daily basis. I don't know. I'm not trying to sound like a misandrist, but like statistically, the things we go
What's
through
going on,
are
Kundi?
high. are in higher stress situations and we handle
Okay.
that well. And I don't think that affects like our ability to lead um or to make decisions or so I hear what you're saying in the natural, but I don't think that that example, I don't think it gels over as an
So
example of something from nature.
I'll give you a better example. Stress in a
Okay.
sense of physicality, physical strength, physical stress. So reason why I think about that, if we don't, then let's push it back to society now. So
Okay, we're
a lot
thinking
of
about
the go ahead.
okay.
Because I'm trying to shape
What
it.
are the
I'm
I
trying to
no
shape
I
it.
understand. What are the metrics? Because women push out whole human beings. That's a whole nother
I'm
level
not
of
saying
stress.
that.
I mean, that's a
I
whole
know
nother
that's again,
level of strength. Sorry, strength and stress, both.
yes.
So I'm trying to flow.
Again, and that is a
Let me
role.
let
And
it
then
cook.
that is a
Let me let
role.
it
No, that this is. So no, I'm saying that's what I'm saying. That
let it cook.
I'm like I said, we're taking it back to like the natural sense. So I'm saying the reason why a lot of this stuff is being questioned is because how we're progressing as society. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
backtracking to the foundation, showing you this is why the foundation is set the way it is and why the structures continue to work the way that they work. That's where I'm at least setting this down. So then we could come back to be like, okay, the reason why it's set the patriarchy. And
Gotcha.
now, especially in 2023 in more modern times, the reason why patriarchy in this word is being used more often in this way is because of the fact that this, and this is happening. So I'm gonna come back to it. Yeah, Kundan, we already ended up doing the words, but we'll come back into it and add it through. But before I add y'all two in, I just want to make sure I'm getting this with Chris, and then we're all gonna go off with
Yeah.
this together. So
We're,
my physicality wise,
mm-hmm.
I'm still of course learning and figuring out, especially when it comes to hunter gatherers and caveman and all that stuff. I still have, of course, my understandings and stuff on what that truly is or not. So
Mm-hmm.
we even know back way when there was always going to be the outliers of there was women who were hunting and there was also men that were gathering, and likewise that
Mm-hmm.
there were a majority of men who were hunting and women that were gathering. So
Mm-hmm.
where I'm talking about in the physicality cases, especially the structure, so physical, that's why I say the physical stress,
Mm-hmm.
the physical structure of things. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the jobs that we have that help build the society, working in a lot of the factories, working in on oil rigs, working in a lot of the physical structures
Mm-hmm.
of society has a lot of men in there. And reason being, because we go back to the physicality of, again, men, we can lift more weights, we can lift more when it comes to the stress of the physical. I'm not talking about mental stress right now. I'm talking in the physicality of things. Because when you were talking about, especially, okay, when the dominance part, that's what I'm trying to get into. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the dominance part of things.
Right.
That's partly
Yeah.
why patriarchy is the thing, is because for a society to be built, we must have that strong foundation of people to be able to physically build the society. Am I saying that not women can't do it? No, there is a percentage of women who work on oil rigs. There's a percentage of women who's doing the lines. There's a percentage of women who was actually working in construction work. But the higher percentage that we have of that is men, and partly because of the fact that they're able to withstand a lot more physical stress when it comes to building a society. We know when it takes to building a nation, men, women, all of those combined to build a nation and keep a population going. That's an effort done together. Now, when it comes to building up a physical society, and again, you can get me on this. I'm just picturing it how I'm at least seeing it, as well as trying to dictate why it's looking what their way is right now. So,
Right.
and I see y'all get it down in the comments. So, the physical aspect, there's a lot of men at work. Now, when it comes to as that's built, now we get into the specific roles of all the different types of jobs that help to also keep a society going. Us as
Mm-hmm.
again, the middle class or working class, however you want to call this, because since we talk about there's no middle class, um, that's
I
where
claim that every day.
there's some folks that still saying that's not even the case. But yeah, it said, let me see.
I'm
While we're
middle
doing
class.
that,
Better treat me right.
said most of our info comes from studies from intellectuals, meaning alleged ability to do studies. Misandry death was death defined as personal experience. Yes, that last one for sure. That last one was just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. On the other
It
one
was like
about
the
it was like, it
statement.
was for sure, based off of, it said what? It
Yeah.
said, based upon unhappy experiences
Mm-hmm.
or upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I definitely get you on that. I'm about to push y'all in because we all up in here, but I want Chris to also pull her point to where I'm trying to build a bit on it. Some women have an issue with the very word misandry because they think you are claiming reverse sexism. So this is where I will also say I agree with you, but at the same time, it's it's really hard to keep on saying who can claim and have what, because then sexism is supposed to be a blanket term, but then even the word in itself, when I looked it up,
Right.
still said when you think
Right.
of sexism, it's only discrimination against women.
Against women. Well, then
So
we'd have to get into the feminist movements, and that's a whole nother topic for another day, because
well,
there was the first wave, second wave, and then third wave, and then
we gonna still
where
we
we
gonna
are
still have
now.
to break it. We still gonna have to break it down because of the fact that
Yeah,
I'll be honest with
because
you. The
it's
last episodes, I'm not talking about no feminism. And these last episodes that I got going on feminism, I don't even
you're
think
not
is
trying to
the
go
last few
out with
topics.
any haters. It's all good.
I don't
Um,
at this day, man, ain't nobody gonna fully like me, and I don't even care. I think it's become more nuanced when you add race into the picture. Again, there
yeah,
is a physical stuff. So you mean pure raw physical strength? When I'm talking about the aspect of the physical built stress, because I'm trying to lay down a
I
foundation of
still
why we use for at least the idea of patriarchy being a thing, especially here in the U.S.
I'm
But
still
it
letting that
says
I'm still letting
it's
that one cook, because
that
I
why the DOEs
something's off.
have kids wearing. I mean, be honest. Would you see yourself out there working on an oil rig 24/7?
What are
It said
DOEs?
I don't know.
What is that? Oh,
80-pound round sex to go to school, build the physicality. Yeah, I'll be the one to admit I'm not built to do a woman's traditional role. I agree. I'm not built for it. That's harder than any physical work that gives me the physical advantage to do so. Yeah, exactly. And my whole thing is that I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to do is bring light to reasons why. So when I'm still going off of the idea of nature and building off of the aspect of what that means when it comes to the natural aspect, is to know that why we seen these roles and how they apply to whether it's a matriarchy, patriarchy, and then into why they can look like
Hey,
misogyny or look like misandry. What's going on, Kundan? What's up, Dallas?
hey,
Peace and
Kundan.
love. We back again, Mr.
uh,
Roverine popping in and out, back and forth.
Nah, I ain't playing with you, Nate. You got me beat.
Well, I was in a mode. My bad. I'm
I was
focusing. I was trying to make sure I
saying,
got at least some of the foundation before letting you back in.
can we just circle back to the physicality just one more time?
Hold on, cause
Yes.
I'd have had some thoughts. Y'all
I know
just
you missed on the other part. Then you left,
Yeah.
and I was like, I know Dallas had something, but you left. You was over here trying to go get somebody your number. Department of Education. Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
be hurting
Okay.
up.
I'm gonna let Dallas go because I'm still
You gonna let
cooking.
fellas go?
Something is.
I,
Yeah, you can go.
I, thought,
hey,
He
I
thinks
thought her,
I'm being misandrous.
It's
y'all.
funny to use these terms. It's hilarious.
I don't even. To be
Don't worry.
honest,
Go for it.
no. What you about to say, man?
No, I was just gonna say, don't worry. Webster's got your back. It just says a hatred of men. You're good.
Man, yeah.
That's it. That's it. All right, go ahead.
Misandry
Go, Dallas.
is hatred of men, and
That's it. It just
misogyny
said
is
hatred of
hatred
Hatred
men.
of women.
of men. Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
So this is why, like, I think we have to be also intersectional, right? This is why I'm
Mhm.
bringing race and even religion into it,
Mhm.
right? Because, for example, black women have invented the word misogynoir, right, to mean a simultaneous oppression involving both uh, racial discrimination and gender
And
discrimination
yeah.
specifically. So they're not just oppressed for being black and not just oppressed for being a woman, they're oppressed specifically for being a black woman, right? And I think it's about time, like black and brown indigenous men invent a similar term, right, to mean specifically being oppressed simultaneously for your gender and race or religion, right?
Mm.
Because the dynamics change, right, between, say, a white woman and a black man or a brown man or an indigenous man,
Yeah.
because there is definitely uh, so she has a racist power over those men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I argue that that particular racist power is also a gender power because the gender is racialized. So it's a racialized gender power, right? So they're oppressing the man, not just for being a man and not just for being black or brown or indigenous. They're being specifically oppressed for being a black man or an indigenous man or a brown man, right? Same thing with, say, between a Christian woman or a Muslim woman and a, say, Hindu man or any non-Christian, non-Muslim man, right?
Mm.
Then again, there's another level of oppression because Christianity and Islam are the main religions in the world. They're
Yeah.
supremacist ideologies. I wouldn't even call them religions. They're supremacist political ideologies in the guise of religion, right?
Mm.
And they have epistemological privilege over everybody else because they're the majority religion worldwide, globally, right?
Yeah.
And they're seen as the only right thing in the world, right? They're the default. They're seen as the default, similar to how whiteness is the default.
Yeah.
These two are seen as the default, right?
Supremacy. Coming back to that.
Yeah, it's supremacy. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Abrahamic supremacy is the term for this, right? Abrahamic supremacy. They're both supremacist ideologies that fall under Abrahamic supremacy because they're all part of, it's a convoluted, interconnected ideology. Christianity and Islam are all based on the same ideas
Hmm.
of Jesus and one God and all of that, right? And they're genocidal at their core because
Yeah.
they believe that there is not just that there's only one God, they believe there's only our God,
Hmm.
which means all other gods must be destroyed and everybody else who believe in different gods must be completely killed and genocided, which is why they've been genocidal for like 1600 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you put all of that and the gender into it, right, then
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like, because when the gender is racialized, it's not just the race that's seen as superior, it's the gender itself that's seen as not only superior, but also that needing more protection, which is why white women are seen as weaker and softer and more feminine. Like, like to this day, doctors believe that black women have thicker skin and therefore don't need as much medical attention. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yep.
literally a bias they still believe in.
Well,
Like,
that's true in a way, and the reason why I'm gonna speak on that is because I was with a dear friend today, right? And
yeah.
this friend, she got is y'all don't haze me, but she's either Latina, Mexican, Hispanic, one of the in that group. But when she did like this to her face today, and I just looked up at her like, and she had like red marks on her face, but it was like light. It wasn't like she was like scratching bad,
Mhm.
and like that was one of the benefits of having you know some good skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good skin. All skin's good skin. It protects you.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all
Oh
look.
yeah, somebody made a good point, which was another thing I wanted to address.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's just this, they said many god cultures are male, female, and two-spirit. If we followed that, we would not have misogyny or misandry. I would tend to agree because all of this also comes from the creation of the gender binary, which is not only a social construct but a colonial construct, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there's a great book about this called The Invention of Women by an indigenous African, right? And
Mm.
she said that before the colonizers came, before the European colonizers and also the Islamic colonizers, right? Before
Yeah.
they came in, they did not have a hierarchy based on gender.
Right.
Their hierarchy was based on age. That the
Yeah.
older you were, the more respect you were given.
Yes.
And it wasn't even like an oppressive hierarchy either. It was just like
Mm-hmm.
you have to respect your elders, right? And it was like kind of like that. So therefore, they did not have a concept of man or woman that in the sense that we have today. Instead, we
And
had gender
yes,
diversity, where there were men, women, and there were like multiple other genders as well, right? Then the colonizers came in and they invented gender not only around uh, gender itself,
Yeah.
they invented it around race, you know, where so it's not only a colonial construct, it's a racial construct because they decided that the only man is a white man and the only woman is a white woman.
mm,
All other women were not actually women, and all the
mm-hmm,
other men were not actually men. So meaning like if you have straight hair, right? If you are thin, right? If you have blonde hair, right? If you have a thin or flat nose and thin lips, right? It wasn't even just about skin color. It was all of those things. Like only people with those features is a woman, right? So if a woman is fat, she's not a woman. If she has curly hair or locks, she's not a woman. If she has dark hair or black hair, she's not a woman. If she has like thick lips, she's not a woman according to these colonizers, right? So so this is why we need to decolonize even our ideas of what gender actually is, right? Like we
Yeah.
were talking about physical strength, like some things are biological, but do we even know that? Because even those things, those
exactly,
books and studies were written by the colonizers, right? All this
exactly.
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
psychology, biology, like everything, all
Mm-hmm,
institutions are written by them as now facts and truths, right?
Yeah.
So which is why now as we're decolonizing, people are finding out that, for example, even the sex binary is false. Not only the gender binary,
mm-hmm,
the sex binary itself is not real. There are multiple like sexes that there are like multiple like even in the animal kingdom there are multiple ways that it's more than just XX and XY chromosome. There are multiple ways that the chromosome can be. Uh, so yeah, so it's like a very like that's a huge rabbit. That alone is a huge rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, for sure.
thank you for bringing that up because that was the missing link, and that's why I was challenging you so hard at
Yeah.
this
I
because
I was
something
gonna
was not sitting right. I was like, no, physiologically, okay, hear you, but no, that's still coming from the construct
I'll
of
be
like
honest with
of a
you.
role. It didn't feel natural as it's taught to us. Like it's natural. It something in my spirit was like that's not actual like the
It's
nature
normal but
of the
not
situation.
natural. Like
Yeah,
that's why we
it's
need
not
to differentiate
natural.
between normal and
Yeah,
natural, right? Yeah. Normal
yeah,
means according to the norm. Just
right,
because something is normal doesn't mean it's natural.
right.
Yeah, I didn't. And then look, this is where I'm saying this, Chris. I'm bringing that all back to. I'm framing it for you. When I was framing it for you, is to get back
Mhm,
to why in Western. I've already talked.
mhm.
We were saying earlier about
Yeah.
how that has a different impact. When I was saying in Africa and other
Right,
different places,
but under
and I was saying
the
beforehand.
patriarchy, which
Yeah.
is the
So that's
construct.
so again,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's fine that you were poking holes at this because I'm
it's
trying to get at the
like
point of
it just
that's
doesn't feel
why.
natural.
And that's why. But I will still, for
Mhm,
me personally, I will still push back on the fact that when it comes to still physicality, there's still majority of more quote unquote, since we're putting in the again the whole gender aspect, that there are more
mhm,
people who would identify or be men
mhm.
have more of a more physicality when it comes to that versus when it comes to folks that would say consider themselves to be women. But I also even have a book that I always like to end up referencing when it comes to again this whole aspect of the binaries and literally knowing that there's a multitude of different things. Again,
Mhm.
we've had these influences for so long that yes, is ingrained in there. I've challenged these
Right, right,
influences.
right.
There's still things that I am still learning about, but to me, still from the outside looking in different places and different sorts of stuff, it still continues to ring true to me, even if that's what it's been put into our heads in the Western field. In many other areas, I'm still looking at it from a worldview,
Mhm.
a consensus when it comes to when we identify in these two, that is still showing that again, men have that when it comes to physicality, because of the fact that I'm being honest with you. That's
I
what I
know,
am seeing.
I know.
That's
I'm
all.
letting it
That's what
cook.
I am
I'm
seeing.
letting it
And am
cook.
I? And then if I'm saying, I'm not saying that, oh yeah, there could be nobody on the other side that can be as strong. Because then that's what we have to keep breaking it again. Like you said, go down into the rabbit hole.
And then we're into
But
misogyny and misandry all over again.
but then that's why, but see, it's
Exactly.
important. But that's why we're having the conversation, because
Right.
they agree to disagree. But now we shed light on the reasons why. That's
Right.
really more so where it is. So then now it's like, okay, we got this information. Where are we gonna go with this? What are we gonna
Going
do
forward.
about it? What type of society are we trying to picture? What is this being said? How is this being done? Again, I don't always just want it to be where it's like, oh yeah, I agree on everything. Nah, I'm more so like it when there's a disagreement, so then I can go back and be like, all right, I checked in and saw this. Now let me go get some more references to stuff. And I'll tell you this, at the end of the day, I truly know nothing, because I can go and read books. I can go and see what's going on in society. I can go on and do this, but truly, will I be credible in all that I speak? No. But the stuff that I'm at and where I'm at right now and how I'm thinking, at least I'm getting the ball rolling. That's all it comes down to after all of this. But now, reason why I set it up that way when it comes to patriarchy and it goes into the whole idea of misogyny is because of the fact that we have these so ingrained, as Kundan was saying earlier, so ingrained within the Western society that men are to do this, women are to do this, that the reason why the physicality is seen the way that it is now, now it answers the question, I don't understand women, or I don't understand men. Yeah, it's going to get into the whole again, this is the whole spiral of when you start going further down into this stuff of why. Again, are we truly living natural lives? That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. And in this particular aspect where we're at, no.
No.
If we
Well,
really
not
want
in
to know all this
capitalism.
stuff, yeah. If we want to
Not
know
in
all of this
capitalism.
stuff, we need to go back to where we originally naturally and figure out, okay, then, and when we let people do what they do, let's see what happens. The reason why I also brought up, when it comes to at least the Western society, there's another, I keep on forgetting whether if it's somewhere in Ireland, I don't know if it's even Iceland or Greenland, it's somewhere around in the area. I always go back and talk about when they have a egalitarian society, especially when it comes to the structure of inside. And I've told him, I was telling him he was getting to the structure inside. But the reason why it's seen physicality between men and women that way in the US is because of the fact that it's ingrained there. And then there's the jobs that each person is taking on to do
Right.
regularly.
Labor. It's always labor.
Yes.
It's always labor.
Well, everybody still has their part to play, and not one person can be like, you can't do that. But when we also
Right.
put it, when we also think about it too, I think about it from this aspect. There are things that we are born naturally gifted at, and there are things that we have to take time to learn to build upon the skill. And for some people, it comes easier than others for that particular thing. When it comes to being able to be an orator and speak, for me, that was nothing natural I had. That's something that I had to gain the skills to do so, to at least get bits and better at it. For me, what came naturally to me was creativity, was doing music, was being able to draw, do stuff like that. And once I've got more into that, I can see how much it's exploded and bloom and how much easier it was for me. You speak to another person, they'll tell you, oh man, being able to organize and actually be a leader on stuff came more natural to me. And then that's why they're able to step into the leadership roles and do that. Other folks being able to tinker with things, whether that's being able to be a builder, being an engineer and stuff like that, that came more natural to them. And then some people can talk about that goes with the birth chart. You can do all of that. Fine. You know, these different acts, like, yeah, it gets all even to a
No.
deeper other side of stuff.
No.
But from the egalitarian societies, what they noticed is when they allowed everyone to choose the roles and things that they wanted, then there was no, difference between a man going for a particular job that a woman does and a woman going for a particular job that a man does, and, et cetera, and go forth. What they noticed is that people would naturally, again, since we're playing with these words, go into a role that was best suited for them, as well as best suited, it comes to see on the outside looking in, best suited for their gender. Am I saying that that's completely wrong? No, but was just one instance. That's not the full instance. This is
Right.
one instance. I don't always like using outliers, but I like to at least give an example and show you that it has happened, but I'm not going to fully always trust it on that, because there's going to be differences that happens. So in that instance, it showed that women would still go more into the helping professions where it had to do with relationships with people. And then that men will still go more into professions that had to do with building things, tinkering things, and actually doing more physical hard labor. That was then the egalitarian societies. Now, coming back to the US, again, speaking on when it comes to the certain jobs and where people are put into in place and how things are going, we speak of the supremacy part of the patriarchy and how that creates a ceiling, not only gender wise, but also racialized. And that's the problem. It's hard to try to differentiate, like when he was saying earlier, between race and then gender and all these other different attributes that come along with it. So that's why it continues to become ugly and continues to become harder to try to dissect it all the way down to the specifics. Because it's like, is it because of the fact that you are a woman? Is it the fact because that you identify as non-binary? Is it the fact that you're actually black? Is it the fact that you're this, that you have this certain type of power, or that you can get into this certain type of role and into those aspects? Yes, but it makes it harder to then try to fully make sense of it because it's going to be based upon individual experience. So my thoughts continually on with why misogyny is going along there with the patriarchy is because how we've already been indoctrinated on how it was built, which we already know a lot of this was done by force. They took other people from other places to build this place physically. We went along with that's how it was supposed to be ran in society. So then when we put heads of people to run a society, men are going to be the heads of society because of the fact that how the roles has been showed here within society is that men are more suited for that particular role versus women majority of the time. I'm just letting you know, this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this is it's a true fact or not, but I'm letting you know this is what seeing is. Yes.
Yeah.
And I am wording it the way that they would wording it. I am wording it the way on purpose on how they would word it because you have to read in between the lines with a lot of this stuff. Just, again, an example of that, we talk about how within the media, they'll use specific words to identify people with and not say those type of people, but you can already associate those people with those words. For example, calling people savages. And we already talking about who they're calling savages, as well as calling people those needing help with mental illness, how you can attribute that to a certain group of people. So there are key words and ways that they're saying it. So I am saying it very bluntly because of the fact that it is bluntly stated with a lot of the things. So if you have a visceral or you have some type of, feeling vitriol from what you're hearing is because of the fact that this is how it is being stated on a day-to-day basis. So,
By the way, speaking of mental illness, California Governor Newsom just signed a law making it
you talk,
easier to lock up homeless people who are mentally ill and put them into mental hospitals. And yeah, by expanding the legal definition of gravely disabled. So that just happened like
yeah.
a week ago. Yeah.
And then also, Kundan, they passed and I was talking about it in the news, they passed another bill. I think it was Assembly Bill 555 when it comes to they're trying to do some type of affordable housing. And they're doing a survey of at least looks like 3 years to see how this report would come out with trying to provide affordable housing for folks who can't afford, the boundary line thing. So they're doing it a 3-year thing, but this was just passed as well by Governor Newsom.
Interesting. And then related to that, he also passed a law making it easier for churches and schools to turn their parking lots into homeless shelters as well, which on the surface seems like a good thing, right? But then when you consider the fact that it's the very church and other supremacist institutions and this entire
Yes.
system through gentrification is turning people homeless,
Yeah.
right? Because to me, gentrification is just another version of the doctrine of discovery. They're They might be doing it in a different way, but it's the same mindset, right? So basically, they create the problem and they are providing the solution
Yes.
conveniently right in the parking lot so that they can convert people when they're at their weakest into Christianity.
Yes. Again, all this hoopla all added together to try to figure out what misogyny, misandry, patriarchy, and matriarchy
Right.
all have to
So
do
like
with
there's
where we are
definitely
at.
a gender pay gap, right? There's definitely a gender pay gap that we can't argue like this, that the women get paid less on a systemic level. And then when you add race to it, certain women who are of a certain race get paid even less, and then if you're of another race, you get paid even less and less, right? I don't remember like exactly which races, but there's also that as well, right? So there is like definitely all of that on the systemic level, right? Which is why some women, especially white feminists, will accuse you of like reverse sexism when you even bring up misandry. But on an interpersonal level, there's
Yeah.
definitely misandry going on as well. There's a
Right.
Yes.
racial misandry
Right.
going on,
Yes.
right? As well as a religious or Abrahamic supremacist like misandry as well going on, right? And on top of that, what's been happening is that women are now being tokenized and put on the face of the imperialist empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so for example,
Mm-hmm.
right now, the U.S. is like the world's number one weapons manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
And which is also why they fund all these wars. In reality, they act all like, moral and whatever. In reality, they're funding all sides. They're funding both sides in every conflict, right?
Yes.
They're selling weapons to every side. So, and guess what? Right now, and this is in the book, White Tears, Brown Scars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, four out of, so the CEOs of four out of the top five weapons manufacturers today are women. And is this progress? Is this a feminist thing? Or are these white, and most likely they're white women, right?
Scapegoat.
So white women are being praised to go bomb and kill black and brown women in other countries. That's what's happening.
Scapegoat.
So I want to speak on a point that you said, Kundan, and then after that, I want to continue this because again, I'm loving the back and forth. One thing that I still do have my gripes with that is always brought up, and I would like to see more of this spoken about, especially from being able to support with the misappropriation or use of saying it, is the whole gender pay gap. My one first thing I want to say about it is I know that there are a lot of lawyers out there that are quid quo pro, which will do these and be able to get off scot free for some of these women that are saying that they're getting paid less. I want to see more of this because, to be honest with you, it seems like it just does not go to the fullest of the courts to then show that, yeah, you are getting paid less. Second
I
thing,
agree. I
second
agree
thing,
on that.
second thing that I will say is stats wise, I'm not going to talk about the egalitarian stuff because the funny thing is it still kind of loops in, but I'm not going to bring it in for this particular say. But stats wise, part of the reason why that there is a quote unquote, are you saying that there's a gender pay gap, which to me, to a certain extent, there isn't, but at the same time, there's a reason why people are getting certain different things. One of them, which we did talk about when it came to the hierarchy in other different places, is age equaling basically experience. I'll be truthful with you, because I had a certain amount of experience, I only get paid a certain amount as a counselor that I am now, versus other people who are still in my same position but they've had more years of experience being a counselor. They get paid more, and it's men or women, and it's because of the fact that it's based off of the age and the experience. And then once I get my age, I start to get more and more when it comes to experience, whether if it's extra payments, bonuses, etc. So sometimes that's not spoken in the argument, saying that it also comes down to how much experience and the age that you have, especially for teachers who also get their tenure. That's a whole nother different story too. The other thing that I want to add into there that also has an impact on that is taxes. So are we talking about before or after taxes as well? Because I will tell you now, if you make a certain amount, even if it's an extra penny or two, you might end up seeing less money. So it might seem like, why is your coworker ended up getting an extra $50 more than you versus what you have? Because when you hit a certain tax bracket, which I saw that they're actually going to be changing the tax bracket very soon for this upcoming fiscal year for taxes, it ends up playing into the role of how much money you get. Especially in Cali, I'm sorry, y'all, we get 30% of our wages taken. 30%.
Especially if you factor in, does your coworker have a kid? Do they have a dependent, or are they single? Because if you're single, that government is taking all your check.
Look,
You
I
have
will,
kids, they give you your money back.
I will have to. I'm literally, I'll second you on that because I actually have taken comparisons, and I did this because I wanted to see. I saw one of my homegirls when I was working at the factory, and then one of my homeboys. We showed and shared our checks. I looked at my homegirl's check, and again, the other aspect I want to add into it is too the hours, the number of hours you've worked, is also where the issue comes into play. Sometimes there's a discrepancy with the hours. And because of the fact that in more cases, when overtime is asked for, they've seen in more cases that men work more hours. That's why they're getting paid more, which also can still also have an effect of them also getting paid quote unquote less because of taxes. But it's showing that that's also a reason why there's an imbalance. There's not a just straight off socialism. You get paid this same amount that they get paid this certain amount. And it's because we have these variances. Is that's why this conversation keeps coming up. But I looked at my homegirl's check, I looked at my check, and then I looked at my homie's check. Out of all of the three, my homegirl, me and her worked the same hours. My other homie worked maybe like an extra like 3 or 4 hours. Me and her had the same amount. She ain't had no dependents. She ain't had none of this. I looked at my check. We made the same amount for that week. I look over at my homies. He ended up making less than us because not only he has a pendant, he also had child support that just took out from his, which was something. Then he had some other weird tax thing that said some California something. And I'm like, what is this? He's like, I don't even know what this is. It took it out of his check. And of course, all the other dental and other stuff that we all have. And he ended up working more. But it's because of the fact that all those different variances all come into play.
Because child support, they don't play with that.
No.
They
So when
come and they take it out every single check. But say he wasn't on child support and say that he was claiming his child as the dependent, he probably would have got more. Because if you have kids, you can always write them off. That's a tax write-off right there. And then you see the return during tax season.
Yeah, please vote to raise the contribution age for Social Security, please. At this point, you know, our Social Security going to be running out, so it's probably going to not become a thing. I think it said 2034. 2034 is where they're saying it's starting to have a crisis about that. So I don't even know within the next 10 years if we're going to even have Social Security at this point.
Less than that.
Speaking of which, I think Governor Newsom also passed a law
Chris.
Raising the minimum wage for healthcare workers up to, I think, $20 or $25, but slowly, like over, I think, a 3-year or 5-year period. So, so that, I guess at least that's a good thing, I guess, especially for healthcare workers because they deal with so much, you know.
I should have never left Vegas.
I am telling you.
There's no state tax.
I know.
You make less. Like literally, the state minimum wage is still like $9-10. So good luck finding anything higher paying. But at least you know you don't have to pay the state tax.
Again, there's trade-offs all everywhere.
Right, everywhere.
Yeah, back in Nevada, in Las Vegas specifically, yeah.
There's no state tax.
The reason why I wanted to double back on that point is, and the reason why I like to still make it the whole, you know, shocking when it says misogyny versus misandry, and we get down into it. is I always want to get into it because of the fact that once we do, I want us to always redirect back where is this all stemming from. So we can get into it, and then now it's like, oh, it's versus me against you and stuff. It's like, no, like a reason why I want to get down deep to it is, okay, you told your parts on why you feel it this way. You told your parts on why I feel this way. Then we start to come back and we make the interconnections of like, well, because we arguing about this point, they still up there doing what they need to do. So why aren't we even thinking about why structurally we gonna fight each other, but then they still like, we still taking your money at the end of the day. Oh, we still being able to run this society the way that we doing at the end of the day. I'm gonna make y'all pit against yourselves, and then this is gonna happen. Oh, there's some misogyny. All right, yeah, let's ride with it. Okay, so misogyny, that's the thing. All right, yeah, he's being hatred of men and hatred of women, and that's that's the narrative that needs to be ran. There is a true hatred of that, but a part of that is then again, how much of this was taught. I know when I got popped out from my mom, popped out from my mom in collaboration between my mom and my dad, I didn't hate my mama. I ain't hate any woman. I didn't hate the people that was out there, maybe the doctor because they might have smacked me, but I'm just playing. But
oh my God.
But to use a very deep, I don't even say deep, but a very strong word for a group of people and group of places, the whole idea for the misandry part where it says based on experiences, the experience part, that's where a lot of these definitions become subjective and not objective.
Your feelings
I mean, it's hard
are
to prove
valid.
it because
Your
it
feelings and your
becomes like
experiences.
he said, she said kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
see, and
hard
that's
to
what.
prove either.
Yes.
Whether misandry or misogyny, it's hard to prove it because it becomes like a he said, she said kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's not sound logic.
No.
It may be valid, but it's not sound. And that's the mistake.
And I'm not saying that logic rules all. It's a part of the equation. Same thing. Misogyny is not the only reigning thing there. There is misandry there, because that will be like me saying to any of you right now that there's just the sun. There's no darkness. What you talking about? It's always sunny outside.
That's gaslighting.
Oh, that different color? That different color? You get what I'm talking about. That different color? Nah, that's not night. That's just more the sun is just closing his eyes right now. It's not the darkness. Like what do you mean by that? That's not night. What is night? What do you mean night? It's only day here. We only talk about day here. What are you talking about night? Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? And because of the fact
there are some things that are blatantly like misogynist, right? Like when Republican male senators make the claim, which is for sure biologically false, when they make the claim that there's no such thing as like pregnancy from rape because apparently the woman's body stops it when it's actual rape, and so that therefore like it's not rape. So like ridiculous things like that,
yes,
do get said from like time to time, right? That we can know of. Okay, for sure this is like not only oppressive, it's just totally a ridiculous lie coming from either total ignorance or willful misinformation, right?
Both. 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 Because again, this is all taught. It's all taught. And then on the flip side, I'll give an example. On the flip side, for misandry, there are pockets of hashtags that says kill all men.
Really?
And yes, there's so many. There's so the thing is, it's also, and I even get into the word for double standard, but a lot of this stuff, because it's the tit for tat and it goes back and forth, that's why we end up having this whole idea of a double standard where one particular side can talk about it, but then the other particular side can't talk about it. And what I mean by that is, especially when it comes to And you can even see it now when they're talking about the red pill, they talking about the manosphere, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about all these spaces and
Mm-hmm.
places for men trying to figure out not only what's going on, some men actually really showing hatred for women. This is like actual
Mm-hmm.
hatred, not just because I
Mm-hmm.
have a perspective about you. Now I am a misogynist, more so of like
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy ready to come to your house and
Yeah,
handle business
yeah,
versus somebody saying, I don't
yeah.
actually agree with your standard that you're speaking about when it comes to men. Just
Mm-hmm.
again to challenge to understand the reasoning. But now you get labeled that. But on the other side, the hashtags kill all men can run rampant on social media. I'm speaking specifically on TikTok because I'm not on TikTok, but I get to see these played through YouTube, so you can kind of say it's a cheat,
I
whatever. I
can
get to
I
see
can give
them
you a run
played.
through.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is a lot of that content is rarely blocked. I'm not saying that it doesn't get blocked. It should get blocked. But at the same
Oh,
time, a lot of it is rarely blocked versus, of course, not only when men have perspectives about what women are doing, but then also when men are actually really being very hatred towards women, that gets with the quickness. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. It should. But
I've got
certain
two thoughts
aspects
on
of it,
that. I got two thoughts on that. Number one, we all know TikTok is funky. We've definitely figured that out post pandemic,
yes,
especially the POC communities on
yes,
TikTok. A lot of their content gets suppressed on purpose. TikTok is kind of like catering to white supremacy, so we do know that. So
yes,
you gotta be like really careful with that. Secondly, when it comes to things like the hashtag, what was I gonna say? Hashtag kill all men or whatever.
yeah,
Not saying it's right or wrong, not picking a side, but
yeah,
further explanation on why hashtags like that kind of come into fruition is
yeah,
because, and I guess if we want to go with the perspective of natural functions, that is more like uh, voicing an emotional opinion versus
yeah,
as men aren't going to go out and do a hashtag kill all women. They're actually going to go and kill women. So that's just the other side of that. You get those hashtags because of the actual actions of violence that happen.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
one is
most
like
mass murderers are men, so
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
do agree
right.
with that. Yeah, yeah.
And no, I'm glad you bring it up because again, before I even get to flesh all of that together, I'm everything that I'm bringing to part is to show you that it's a systemic
Mm-hmm.
issue,
Yeah.
no matter what. I'm sharing those things because of the fact that this is what I am seeing. Am I saying that either or is extremely wrong? No, is though
No,
they're
no.
going to be out there regardless, but it's just
Right.
showing that systemically that's how it's being placed. Again, it's this pitting between both and figuring out which and what is there. But what ends up happening is, again, on both terms and both sides, there will be that person that takes it to the furthest extent. Again,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to get into the last part because that's where a lot of this is going to like pull back into it. But that's the reason why it is very, very imperative that we guard ourselves against what is being said and put out there and always to check the facts and always to make sure we know what is happening and what is being said because there are a lot of people on here who are easily influenced and because
Mm-hmm.
we may be speaking our perspective and saying this is what we feel it might be an emotional response to things. There are
Mm-hmm.
some people that's like, you know what, I felt so deeply moved about that, I actually want to go and act on those things. But is that our fault? No, but we still just have to keep that in mind. Again, that's why I like to still just go deep into this so then I
Mm-hmm.
could come out and say that because these are internal issues that need to be fixed,
Mm-hmm.
what is going on at the whole aspect is a system, it's a systemic thing.
It's
So that's
a
why I
cause and
wanted to
effect.
brief.
And
Is
I would
exactly.
Definitely. It's a
argue that,
cause and an effect. A call and a response.
mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But go
And I
for it.
would argue that that hashtag is also racist because all men include black men, brown men, indigenous men, all racialized men.
Does
So,
it also include trans
and also
men? Because it's saying
disclaimer for
all.
Instagram,
Yeah.
we do not condone that hashtag. We're just talking about it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
Oh yeah.
are
What?
definitely
Oh yeah.
against it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
This is for
But
Of
yeah,
educational
course.
purposes
Purpose.
only. That's what you have
All
to
right,
say on
YouTube.
TikTok. You have to
Okay,
say this is for
YouTube,
educational
Instagram.
purposes only.
Yeah, stop with all of that. Don't even try to come for this. I already got one flag. We're almost done with what's the word. You ain't got to worry about hearing my voice
Oh.
anymore.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We did
But
that long one, and it didn't let us upload.
well,
Yeah,
because of the fact of the video that was played, and then we had our resident troll in here sending it to the person when the thing was happening. So of course Instagram ended up and said and blocked it. So
Yeah, I
again,
remember. I was there.
I know,
so
right?
yeah. But like I
Some
said,
of
We
not a
did
first
all
time.
that work, all that mental labor, that good content, and it's like no.
Yes, but again, measuring it back to misandry and misogyny on both sides, to me, of course, is extremely troublesome.
Mm-hmm.
And it is extremely troublesome. I'm not saying that people can't have that perspective. That's fine. But it becomes troublesome for this next part of isms, again, that we're going to talk about. And again, it's sidetracking us from initially what are we supposed to be doing as a country and as a nation. We talk about this stuff so then we can shed light on this stuff to know that this is an issue, and it's an issue on multiple fronts. And if we don't talk about it on multiple fronts and we let one front continue to be the complete one out in front, that's where you're just like, oh yeah, it's not even really much of a thing when it comes to matriarchy, because again, it's not even really said and put out there because of what's happening within the Western culture. But it's very important to speak about it because of the fact that that is another, aspect of society. Because again, there's still societies that are using it. There's some societies that have a dual of that. We've talked about all the different types
Mm-hmm.
of governments and things of sort too. There's not just one way to do things. But
Mm-hmm.
if we decide to keep just only speaking about the one way, we know we should know by now. When it comes to history and it being rewritten in the eyes of the
Mm-hmm.
victors and everyone else, we lose out on these perspectives. So then that's when it becomes all within the consciousness of that's the only thing that we know. And guess what? That is not the only thing that we should know.
Mm-hmm. Especially us, um, in our age range, in our brackets. I don't know if there's much um, help for the older generations because they are kind of solidified in their ways of thinking
Yes.
and what they know is law. Like I live with boomers, what they know is law.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna change their mind. You can
And
bring in all the data, all the facts, not with
but
the experience.
that's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing of it though, is because I'd rather have those living relics of all the different generations so we can see where it not only has it progressed, but where it has regressed, and seeing what worked
Mm-hmm.
and what didn't work. Because ultimately we're supposed to be upgrades, and we're supposed to be improvements of previous generations moving into the future and figuring out where we lost out on. That's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the point in the
One of
narrative,
the
one of
goals.
the many posts. Yes, one of those particular
One.
okay.
goals. Yeah, but
So by isms, you mean all the racism, classism,
All of it,
ableism,
and
yeah,
how it
sexism,
affects.
colonialism,
Yeah.
imperialism, all
And
of
how
these.
it
okay.
affects
If,
your livelihood and
Socialism.
how it
if,
affects you as a person, and then you get to this age of like you're almost complete, and who are you now in this moment because of all of those factors.
And since we are talking
Yeah.
about it and going into these, we're going to go ahead and jump into the last topic for tonight, which will still loop everything in. But the last topic that we have for tonight is how isms permanently change the culture.
Mm.
So
So
I know we've spoken about a couple of them, but y'all throw some out and then let's
one
get into it.
bring into the picture because the question is how isms permanently change the culture, right?
Yes.
So how does it change it, right? So I want
Mm-hmm.
to bring into the picture something called the crooked room experiment, right?
Mm.
So if you if you put a human being in, so there's a special like type of illusion room called the crooked room, right? Where everything is crooked, where the walls are crooked, even the floor is crooked, the tables and the chairs are crooked, right? And and, and if you have a person like sit on a chair in that crooked room, right?
Oh.
They
Yeah.
will they will claim that they're sitting straight even when they're tilted 30 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So the room, the entire environment changes that person's perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes a metaphor for how uh, psychologically crooked environments, right? Like all of these isms, like colonialism and imperialism being the number one, and then all the isms come from those two, right? And how they psychologically change our mindset, even on an individual psychological level, not just systemic, where and this is how
Yeah.
we end up with intra-community or internal community colorism, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
In India, for example, skin whitening creams are a multi-billion dollar industry for this reason, right? It's
Yeah.
not because it's an inherent part of the culture. It's not. It's not part of Hinduism. It's not part of Indian culture. It was imposed on us by the colonizers, and now Indians ourselves have taken it on as just this crooked room that we think is straight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's basically what it is. It's a legacy of colonialism. This is also why British era uh, colonial homophobic laws are still in all the colonies except India. Right? India is the only country that finally outlawed that homophobic law, and even India did it only in 2018. So even India took 70 years, 7 decades to outlaw it. So even though the colonizers are gone, their laws are still in place in many of these countries.
Yeah. And adding to that, because these isms are a metaphor for that experiment and many others to come, it creates not only a culture of misinformation, but it also creates a culture, depending on what the ism is. And I'm already going to use one of the words in it, but it's just the way that it is. It creates a culture of separatism.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we talk about always putting these boxes, the categories, always having to have to identify and have a certain aspect of, life so that people can fully understand it. I mean, I still to this day understand why we have categories and why we label ourselves certain things is because of how curious we are as humans. So then again, this is a part of the natural part of us is now also combining with the artificial ism made man-made version of us, trying to
Mm-hmm.
understand why we're calling it this thing
Mm-hmm.
when naturally we're setting it up and it's already been set to be this one thing. Now we're trying to figure out as we're evolving, okay, why are we calling it this? So reason why I say it also creates that ism of separatism is because once I know that I apply in this particular space and you don't apply in this particular space, the next thing in my mind is, okay, if they don't apply in this particular space, that means that, again, like the word says, we are separate from each other. That doesn't make us in any way, shape, or form close to each other. And then the more that we start to add these isms,
Mm-hmm.
so then we start to add in the absolutism, which in
Mm-hmm.
there's just only an absolute role or something. We forget about collectivism,
Mm-hmm.
which and there's another ism, but that's talking about in the sense of everyone having, communal aspect of stuff. We get into the idea of capitalism, we get into the different ideas of the egotism, we start to compile all these different isms and all these different layers. And especially in the West, it has came out to the whole idea of I'm separate, I'm also an individual, but at the same time, I'm still seen a part of a whole society. But how can I be seen a whole part of a society if I still have these separate views on how people are supposed to be? And because of the fact that it goes into Pandora's box trying to figure all of this stuff out, people decide to end up going and saying, well, this is already too much. Boomers, like you're saying, and many folks who went through this rally now are saying, I'm done trying to even fight this fight. I don't care anymore.
Right.
Okay? Now this is for y'all to figure out and for me to sit back with what I already
Literally their
know.
phrase. Literally what they say.
Yes.
This is for you to figure it out.
This is for you to figure it out.
Yeah.
And what's happening right now, we are going through a reconstruction, challenging this stuff, peeling back all of these layers of the isms to get to the full understanding, understanding, overstanding, understanding of where are we going to go as a nation, as a people, as beings, human beings in any aspect and form. So the reason why I'm saying that these isms are permanently changing the culture is because each time that we don't step back to have these conversations, and I got you, each time we don't step back to have these conversations and peel back these layers, the more and more this translates and it gets carried on to the next generation to be like, okay, now you got to figure this out. Instead of we had 15 isms last generation, but we didn't even get to touch, we didn't get to even touch on 3 of the isms. And then now 4 more has been added this generation. So now we have to deal with 16, 17 more isms because we didn't even get them to deal with the previous ones on there. So we start to create more of this baggage that makes it even harder for us to see clearly of where we're going. It's like wearing 25 different blindfolds and just trusting God, whoever God may be, because at this point is all these atheisms, monotheism, polytheism. It's at this point, it's like, okay, who's gonna take the wheel? Who is this proverbial person that's supposed to take the wheel? Am I going to do it? No, I have 25 blindfolds on. Okay, let the other ism drive. But wait, how is that ism going to drive when its other counterpart is saying that no, you shouldn't be doing it that way? It just gets to a whole narrative of the confusion aspect part. It's because we haven't addressed these things. Now we're so confused to how do I even make my first step?
Right. And then, like you mentioned, I will circle back to you saying passing it on to the next generation with only addressing 3 maybe out of the 15, and then they're adding on 4, but they're only adding on 4 because of going back to what we said at the beginning, maybe not understanding the context, not understanding different variables
Yes.
within it, just hearing buzzwords and creating a type of crisis out of the level of understanding or understanding or overstanding that they get from the 3 that have been, they're like subsections of the 3 that are being dissected, but we still have 15, and then
yes.
we have 4 more that are subsections of the 3 of the progress that we made so far. So it's like its own cycle.
Which has still not even became in itself because of the fact that we haven't even seen at least because of history, text being changed, things being restated and put out, we haven't seen or even got to get the full picture of society in its naturalist form, most natural form. We've seen it as it is built in some way, shape, or form. The earliest that at least is in the books.
Constructed.
Yes.
Well constructed.
Yes. And the earliest that we can try to trace back right now, there might even be earlier, but as of right now, The earliest civilizations that we can trace back to even start talking about is ancient Sumer and the Sumerians.
Mhm.
And even back
Mhm.
when they were a thing, they've already had technologies running. So when I'm talking about like nature in
Mhm.
its true naturalist form, it's like you are
Mhm.
out there with the heat, rain, sleet, snow. You don't even have an aspect of how to truly like build something. You are coming and making it up as it goes. So yes, we're talking about
Mhm.
cavemen and stuff like this, but in the aspects of really in the books, because a lot of this stuff
Mhm.
we can still want to say that it can be factual.
And
BC,
it's
yes, you can say
speculative. It's
yes.
speculative. Yeah.
Hey, I'm
Yeah.
back.
A
So
So I was
so
gonna
it
you were
creates.
saying
I was
Go.
gonna say that we can where we can really like our generation as far as back that we can go to comprehend. I would even argue it's as little as maybe only the 1800s to really
Mm,
conceptualize to under like to really like be in the shoes and to understand everything beyond that is speculative. It is a bunch. It
I feel
is
that.
kind of like what was written, and this is the analysis of how things were. You know
You,
what I mean?
yes, you know what? You know what? I'm glad because we need a starting point. We're over here playing around with so many different areas and
Right.
periods. Where we going to start to actually address and look at this stuff? Because I'm gonna tell you this too. I think you're that's a great point that you brought up too to even talk within the 1800s because back in 2020 when it came to the running of voters to vote for the presidential election, guess what? They had people voting from the 1800s. They had people that were on record that were born in 1898 are voting for the president in 2020.
Maybe.
I'm being serious. I saw some of
No,
the stuff. I looked
I
it
know
up.
you are. I know you are. But I'm over here like, how old that would be? Like they'd be over 100. So like
they're over 100 years old,
120.
125 years old.
Right. I'm like, what is that number? What is that number? What is that
I'm not
age?
look at. I'm not saying
That
that there
that
are
sounds
folks.
like fraud.
Exactly, but because you just said that, because you said that number, it
Yeah.
just makes me be. It makes me just say that you know what? Then we should at
Uh,
least place it in that point to really just do
right. So
a whole
like something we
regenerative
can touch.
review.
Right.
Yes,
Tangible. Like
yes,
I told you, I've been watching these documentaries. Like I've been like that's my favorite pastime because that's my personal mission is to understand um the different generations. So like when I was living in Vegas, I had my little timeline across my wall. I had sticky notes and I had it
yes.
started from I wanted as far back that I wanted to go was the silent generation. So that's the
Mm,
generation right before the boomers. So that's where I like was like, okay, I can probably conceptualize because that's like the generation of my grandparents because unfortunately my parents are boomers even though I'm a millennial. My parents are way older than me. Like we're about 40, 50 years. No, 40 years. Yeah. So I can probably fathom my grandparents generation. So that would be the silent generation. So I've been hitting it heavy. I'm like, these are tangible. These are tangible thoughts. When it gets to like Egyptian and Sumerian history and things like that, yes, I can listen to it. I can learn. I can grasp it. But it is all speculative because
yeah,
who's the one telling me? This was the hardest thing I couldn't find. I found a lot of podcasts on ancient Egypt, but I could
yeah,
never find one by actual Egyptians. It's always some British guy.
yeah,
It's always some British guy giving the history of ancient Egypt. So that's why I just wanted to like pinpoint and like bring it in like something that's tangible is probably the 1800s is as far as we can probably really conceptualize. It's like, yeah, that was just yesterday.
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Go for it, Kundan.
Going back to what you said earlier about all the isms creating a culture of separatism, right?
Yeah,
It's that is the whole point
Woo!
of the imperialists and colonizers. creating all of these different isms, right? Because their goal has always been, and this is going all the way back to the Roman Empire, right? Um,
Yeah.
there's a great video series by Sana Joshi pointing out that the U.S. Empire is just a continuation of the Roman Empire, right? And so going all the way back to the Roman Empire, their goal has always been mind control through divide and conquer, right? Because if you can control the mind itself, you can control the minds of the population. It's a lot cheaper to control them than to do it at the point of a gun, right? Because you can't just be pointing guns at people all the time. That has to be the very, very last resort, right?
Yes.
And so that's why you have legal all of these legal mechanisms first, right? You have the prison system, you have fines, right? If you speed, you get fined a ticket, right?
Yes.
Even the HOA right now is threatening to uh, fine us if we don't clean up the carport. Apparently, they're
Yep.
claiming that there are some oil leaks on the carport, right?
Hmm.
So, by going back to the mind control thing, right? So the CIA was so obsessed with mind control
Operation Paperclip.
that they invented the MK Ultra
Oh,
mind control
MK Ultra.
program,
Yep.
right? And that
Operation
involves
Paperclip.
telepathy. Yeah, telepathy. They were researching psychic abilities. It doesn't even matter whether you believe in psychic abilities or not. The point is, they believed it enough to pour millions of dollars into it, right?
Yes.
So, and then they started uh, appropriating and twisting indigenous practices to invent things like hypnosis. Hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
actually comes from indigenous practices, hypnotherapy, all of these things, right? Remote
Mm.
viewing, visualization, all of these things. And and then when the MK Ultra program was outlawed finally, thank God, right? By the
Yes.
way, it also involved sex abuse, all of these things they were using for mind control, pedophilia. Because if you can control them young, it's easier to control them, right?
Yes.
And so when it was outlawed, they continued the program secretly via the creation of cults. That's how you end up with
Mm-hmm.
things like James Jones and even today's Scientology, right? Or even the
Yes.
Nexium cult. If you like documentaries, I highly recommend watching The Vow on HBO. It's an
Okay.
8 part
That
video series
one's in
about the
my
cult,
queue.
about Nexium. And it's harrowing what they did. They literally created a hierarchy of masters and slaves, little masters and slaves, like people who had to call each other slave and master. So there was a master, and there was a slave, and then that slave had their own slave underneath it, who had to call that slave a master, and then another slave beneath it. That's how like gnarly it went, right? And and the mind control was so powerful, like that the the women would, like you would have a bunch of women be stripped naked, and they would literally allow uh, the initials of the founder to be branded on their crotches. And that's how powerful the mind control was. That cult was able to do. Right. So they've refined mind control even up to that point. Right.
Yeah.
And
And I want to add to that too. And then there's that use of experimentation, which then makes it into one of the other ones that you made me start thinking of while you're speaking about it. It reminded me of the Stanford prison experiment and how putting
yeah, yeah.
the whole idea of having the overseers. A couple of students played a role of an overseer, and the other students play a role of prisoners, and how heated that came and became to again when it came to the mind control of now I've put myself in this particular role, and now this is how I have to be seen and used. It it triggered something inside of each one of those people playing those roles to a point where it wasn't, here we go with these words, it wasn't natural of them to respond that way. They ended up playing and being a character, and they played that role so well it got to a point where that it was hard for some of them to even turn it off within that experiment because they thought this was real life. This was it. Like, I'm truly a prisoner. You're the overseer. I hate you because you're the overseer. I'm gonna try to do this. And even after the experiment, again, it created that PTSD for some of them that like it was a very realistic thing. They ended up had to stop the experiment. I think it only went on for 2 weeks because of the fact of how
I
intense
think
it
it's
got.
6 days. They were going to do it for 2 weeks. They had to end it
Oh
in
yeah,
six
it
days.
was a 2 week
Because that,
simulation of experiment, but because okay, yeah.
yeah, because it was that horrible. Right? It became that horrible. They had to end it in 6 days.
But yeah. So adding and then going into how the isms change the culture, it creates the trajectory of where it is going to go.
Right.
And when it changes the trajectory of where it's going to go, just like with anything, whether if it's feminism, socialism, you know,
Because that one went through everything.
pragmatism,
Yeah.
all the other isms, what it ends up doing is because we have all these layers, the trajectory, the why of what this was all created for loses its steam and we get thrown a different way. So for me, when I was talking about earlier, not saying I'm not even able to, but when I even try to pinpoint and think about what is American culture as well as what are the American values, it's so bombarded with so many of these isms, it makes it harder for me to fully understand what it is. Besides, when I was saying consumerism, but I also see the other side of even I can even compare it. I know you really can't make comparisons, but even back to the 70s when it comes to the sexual liberation of stuff and what's happening within that aspect is letting folks, of course, still find and figure themselves out, but they're doing it in a sense of where it's hurting one of the values, which for me is a family. It's a very big value, but because of how we have, at least that's one of the isms. Again, I'm just trying to pick them. You just seeing piece by piece of what I'm seeing, but because we see there's so much freeness when it comes to the sexual marketplace and what's happening now, you have not only people exiting out and still trying to do it when we would still say quote unquote the traditional way, when we're still speaking of what are we trying to do? Are we trying to build families? Are we trying to keep a nation going? But we have folks on that other half and extreme of then saying that no, this is the only right way to go, so we have to stay on this particular course. I'm going to continue to still have my one night flings and do whatever I want to do with these one night flings because I'm still exploring and figuring myself out. That's all good and well, but what happens is what Kundan was saying earlier too, is that because a lot of children are so malleable when it comes to this point, we are allowing them to see it in its fullest form without them being able to get a true understanding of its impact and effect long term. Now, am I saying is it completely wrong? No. But I will tell you, because by experience of me working with kids, me going and seeing other different places, TikTok and how it's managed, even though we know it's still a systemic thing. I see the outlook of relationships and building and creating this stuff is becoming less and less wanted. It's more so I just need you for the moment and that's it. That's all I want. We don't need to be building anything. You're supposed to just pleasure me in this particular way. You're supposed to take care of me because you are a man. You're supposed to provide for me. All right, yeah, you're a woman, so yeah, you're supposed to not have all of this particular dirtiness to you, and you're supposed to only be mine. So it gets to a point where I'm just letting you know. These are the look. You're doing that. I'm even spitting back what some of these sixth, seventh, and eighth graders are even saying. They are saying
Right.
these things, and I'm just
Right. I
like,
know because they're getting it from. I'm rolling my eyes because I'm actively like on TikTok. Like I don't make videos, but I'm watching what is going on, and
yes,
these are the conversations
narratives.
verbatim, and so I'm not surprised sixth, seventh, and eighth graders are having these
Yeah.
discussions
TikTok is
because
the worst.
it's being filtered right into them. They're just regurgitating.
Yes,
Yeah,
but when you
it's all
regurgitate something,
Right.
after a while, it's getting
You
ingested, and
internalize
then
it. Yeah, they're internalizing it. Yeah. Without
yeah. I even
understanding the
saw this
full
TikTok
context.
video where this kid, it looks like she's like 5 or 6 or 7, and this kid was weeping, right?
yeah,
Uh, because her father called her something, and she was weeping like this word that her father called her is like the worst thing to be called, right?
Hmm.
And she's crying and saying, "My dad called me a Democrat. Like this was the worst thing that you can ever be called." Like, and she was like weeping like crazy. I was like, "Oh my God!" Like the mind control is starting
yes,
that young.
yes, and when you're able to get it so young, all that was there previously, like we were saying, it gets erased or not even known.
Hmm.
So what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with there being a clean slate, but is it truly a clean slate when you still feel like there's so much heaviness on you, but that's just how you're supposed to be, going back to the experiment?
Hmm.
Because that's how it was
No.
supposed to be naturally set up and seen. I'm already sitting sideways this way. So when the reset came, I'm already been sideways. So there's nothing wrong because I'm already here. But now, why is there much more weight?
Right. Right.
And it's because of
Hmm.
the fact that since we've redefined what it means to be in this particular generation, again,
Hmm.
modern versus traditional versus all of this stuff, we keep on
Hmm.
redefining and redefining, but we're not classifying, like we were saying earlier, what was already previously stated. So when we still keep
Right.
on wondering why is there pieces missing, is because guess what? We ain't even on. We're not even on level. We're not even going back to level 1. We passed all the way up to level 15, and then now we forgot all of the moves that we learned on the previous levels, and wondering why
Right.
this next level. I'm like, why can't I move to this side or turn this way? And it's because of the fact that that was a skill you had previously, but now you lost sight of it because now you're in a new level, and that new level supposedly doesn't call for it, but it would be extremely useful to know so that you can end up beating the level a bit faster. So then you can have time to start thinking about how you're going to combat the next level and then know all the tools in your arsenal. So it's the tools are being taken away, and then we're forgetting that we actually had the tools,
Right.
even
That's
though
true. That's
the
happening.
tools is somewhere down there
Hmm.
innately, but we're not pulling it back out because of the fact that it's like, no, as a society now, when you hear this particular word, you're gonna have that response. You're a
Hmm.
Democrat, that's the worst you can be called. Not knowing that way back when, if you ended up calling a person a jigaboo or some other different type of word that could be a slur. Yeah, I said it because people be laughing about this word. But again, that's why it's
It's
the
not
differences
okay.
of times. I know it's not. Look at
Right.
even
Right.
my
Right.
teacher. I'll even say this. Even my teacher,
Right.
my teacher when we were speaking about slavery way back when, especially
Hmm.
also talking about what's it called it during that time, segregation during around the 50s and all of in that time. He was my teacher. He was like roughly born around that era, if not his parents was really more so in there. So when one of the kids didn't say that particular word, but they used the word colored, he was more offended at the word colored than that
Colored.
particular
Hmm.
word because of the fact that, again, from where he was set, that's the worst thing that you can be called versus the other
Right.
word that you're using now. So, am I
Right.
saying that we need to create a whole jumbo soup of all of this and just start stirring it around? No, not
No.
necessarily, but it would be nice to at least have an idea
Have
of what was
context.
previous. You have
Like
the
what we were talking
context. So
about earlier. Context.
because once you, like you
Yeah.
said, even when Kuden said earlier too, and I keep saying it back as well as what you were saying earlier, Chris, is once we have the knowledge on a lot of this stuff and we are thinking and we're critically thinking about this stuff, we become a threat and a problem. So it is so
Yeah.
much easier to create that mind control as well as have like what happened with COVID and some of these kids still reading at the lowest of levels,
Oh my
because that's
goodness,
still
yeah.
in our good interest. We still got kids going into the schools, and then for some of the school stuff, we got kids moving into the sped. So then now they become 3 times more as valuable, because now regular kid only gets like 15, maybe 16,000, but a sped student gets almost twice, if not 3 times that. So if we can pull them into that, we're making more money, while at the same time now we get to change their courses, they can stay longer, et cetera, et cetera. So it's still, again, the system is running perfectly as it should, but for us, we already know how fully flawed it is. And when that continues to be the case, and we don't have a society that is able to take the time and to really reflect, recollect of what's happened, know the history, and really get down to the roots of stuff, we are always going to just be treating the band-aid. So then those 4 isms that were there previously, and we only got to see the 2, going into the next generation, now we got another 8 or 9, is going to continue to keep piled on. And now all we're going to do is just only be able to mess with just the symptoms and not the root.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Correct.
then another way mind control is done, like I was taking Dana Joshi's video series on imperialism, and she was giving the example of TikTok and all of these TikTok challenges,
Mm-hmm.
which are often done by younger and younger kids these days. And often these challenges are becoming more and more painful. Like, so like
Mm.
this first there was the ice bucket challenge,
Mm-hmm.
but nowadays there's even like standing and walking on nails and things like that, or laying down on nails. So they're literally becoming like physically more and more painful because these pedophiles are getting off on
Mm-hmm.
watching those videos,
Mm-hmm.
which they're seeing, and they're probably the same people setting up the challenge, and and then of course the algorithm makes it go viral. Uh, and then once they see the videos, they can also private message these kids and lure them as well, right? So they're not only getting off these videos, they can even, in some cases, like lure these kids as well because now they know which kids are more impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of different pipelines going on through TikTok
Yeah,
right now, and it's actually really sad. Especially because
What's
there
up,
is
Jay?
supposed to be a guideline in place, but of course, like with anything, it's not it's not being recognized, it's not being utilized.
I'm
Kids are gonna
18. No, you not. You are
kids
10 years
are gonna
old.
kids are gonna find a way, you know. I remember I was a kid. Yeah. You find a way. Like
Mm.
my vice was MySpace, you know.
Thank you
So
for sharing that, Lee. I didn't even, I again didn't even know, my man, but really
yeah,
appreciate you sharing that.
yeah. I don't know. Sorry, you had to go through
Chris, you
that.
know, who that is.
yeah, I do. I did
Mm-hmm.
know that. Oh my
Mr.
goodness.
Flynn, Mr.
Yeah.
Jaden Flynn.
Yeah.
But sorry, I ain't
Yeah.
trying to put your government out there. My bad,
So,
G. My bad. Don't if you didn't hear anything, look at the light, look at it, look at the pin, look at the pin. I was
Men
like,
in Black. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so
Well, I mean,
with it
child
being,
marriage is legal in 40 states out of 50 states.
yes, you did send me
And
that.
just 5 years ago, yeah, 5 years ago it was legal in all states. But there's this organization called Unchained at Last that's been fighting it state by state.
Mm-hmm.
And they've succeeded in getting it outlawed in 10 states. So check this out. It's child marriage is legal, but child divorce is not. Because you have to be 18 at least to
Get
divorce
divorced.
in all states. So how convenient is that?
What
So
about
Yes.
you can be put,
annulment?
yeah, so you can be put in a potentially abusive situation, but you can't
Yeah.
legally get out of it because divorce is illegal,
See,
right?
I don't have to
And
worry about that, but I'm not getting married for that.
yeah, and often it's the parents that sell the kids into the
I
marriage,
want to
right?
Yeah.
Like
leave
even in
if I want to.
California, it's legal, but it requires in California it requires parental consent and a court order,
Yes.
right?
Mm,
Yes. I imagine, oh my God, the hoops you have to jump through if you're like in a southern state like
yes.
Arkansas or
Hmm.
Alabama because they have different loose rules over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, marital rape was legal in all states right until 1993. or wasn't outlawed in all states until 1993. And then there are still 12 states where there are still like loopholes, like if the wife has been drugged or is unconscious, you can still rape her. Washington had such a loophole until 2013, just 10 years ago, right? So it's crazy. So if you put two and two together in those 12 states, child rape is also legal as long as it's in a marriage.
Mm.
Yeah. And again, stemming from all these isms, which also goes back to, and I'm sorry, my face is all up in here. Y'all see the whole face. Um, it goes back to now, what's the full attention around that? Like, what are we intently doing with all of this information, as well
I'm
as
happy. I'm happy
what? Yeah, what?
you circled back to intent.
Yeah,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, with all of this stuff, like I said, I can still have my perspectives on stuff. You have your perspectives on stuff, and it's a beautiful thing to talk about this because it's important. Because if we don't keep the conversation and thoughts and perspectives on this stuff being said, it's going to be lost. And we're
Mm-hmm.
already in that point where, again, multiple tactics are being used to keep us at a level. Shouts out to the elder Rasan Delay. I've shot him out a long time ago. I haven't watched any of his videos in a while, but he talks about this being basically 3D lockdown, and in the
Mm.
aspect of where we're having this is also mentally.
Yeah.
It's not only just a physical, spiritual, but it's this mental war. And when you can mentally continue to lock somebody down, like y'all said, you control the mind, the body follows. That's how
Yeah.
it's really accessing itself. The brain is what's making the heart and all of the different arteries and things pump. I know that there's studies about saying even after a while, once the head is cut off from such and there, like it's still functioning, like the brain is still alive for a certain amount of time. Everything interwoven still works together. Each one has its certain part in the body, but ultimately there's a main conductor that's running the whole train. And when we don't get to train, you see the flip, we don't get to train and actually exercise this muscle to its full extent, this is where all of the extra confusion, the lies, the misuse of information, the status quo, these isms become so pervasive to a point that we've all been domesticated. We're legally pawns. I'm still bringing that aspect still back into this
Mm-hmm.
to now it becomes easier for us to just accept a reality that's placed in front of us without needing to question it. Because if we question it, it becomes too difficult for us to even try to go at because we have all these multiple layers of isms. And if you speak out about an ism, you're hurting a group of people because you're speaking out about that ism. And if you keep
Yes.
talking about that ism, you become the enemy. And guess what?
Yeah.
Because we redirect the energy amongst ourselves and see ourselves as the enemies and not truly where we're supposed to be gearing that towards, that's why this stuff will continue to happen. The whole differences of men, women, all aspects of gender on a coach, on a spectrum, or just even just in general, because there's multitude of things in nature. Like I said, going back to the natural aspect of stuff, that's why there are hybrids of even flowers, pollinated into other flowers, creating other different parts. Like you're saying, even with the XYs, there's still certain parts of our body that we have yet to still explore and fully understand, whether if it comes down to the chromosomes and it comes down all the way down to the DNA, there's still different links that are supposedly, again, unlocked or have not been able to fully explore and understand that. So because we don't go to those places and we stay in our lower self or lower place, it makes it so much easier for us to have this game ran on us without doing anything.
So I want to show you a practical example that's been happening in my own community, in the Hindu community, right? As far as this divide and conquer mind control, right?
Yeah.
So I've talked about the duopoly before, the left right,
Yes.
Democrat Republican thing that we have here. That is such a powerful tool for mind control, right? Because what's happening is, first of all, the leftists, who are also imperialists, just like the right, right? They're
Yes.
painting Hindus as right-wing fascists, right? But what's been happening to Hindus is, for a long time, Hindus have actually been overwhelmingly voting Democrat and voting more liberal, left-leaning, right? But now what's been happening is Hindus have been so traumatized by the left, especially since this Hindu-phobic bill that they tried
Mm.
to pass is by Democrats, right? It was created by Democrats, created by these leftists and liberals. Uh, and even though it passed bipartisan, right? Every yes vote was by a Democrat, and every no vote was by a Republican. So what's been happening now among some Hindus is that they're literally dismissing very legitimate, valid issues as just leftist agenda or leftist issue, right? Whether it's land back or Black Lives Matter or women's rights or trans rights, uh, they're
Yeah.
like, oh, no, that's a leftist issue. We don't believe in that, right?
Yeah.
They're even believing in the meritocracy, even though there's no such thing as a real meritocracy in America. It's just an excuse for to hide racism, right? It's like, oh, we just hired the most qualified person who just happens to be white or Christian or Muslim, right? So that's, and then they even believe in the American dream. So they're becoming the actual right wing that the left is painting us as,
Yeah.
literally falling into that trap. And it's like this is literally mind control, like
Yes.
what is happening to some Hindus, and it's very like sad and disturbing to see like what's becoming. And what's even worse is that they're defending their stances by claiming that this is what a real Hindu is, that this is real Hinduism, and trying to hide behind Hindu words and twisting Hindu words
Yeah.
to fit their like doing mental gymnastics to fit their belief system, right? When in
Yes.
reality, they're just becoming imperialist pawns.
Mm. Mm. And, and
And the sad
that
thing about that
creates.
is, in reality, the left doesn't really care about land back, no Black Lives Matter, no trans rights, no women's rights. It's all just for show. It's
Yeah.
all just to show that they're a good person, right? It's all performative activism. It's all allied theater. That's the sad irony of it. In reality, they don't even care about these things at all.
How far
And
left do you have to go to be considered a leftist?
What?
how
How
left?
far left do how far left do you have to go to be considered a leftist? Like on the spectrum, is it like at the 30-degree mark, 40, 50?
Um, it honestly, you're gonna continue to go in circles because especially if you're a
Right, because
leftist and
you'll
leftist in
end
a
up
car.
right.
If you're a leftist in a car, you're gonna continue making lefts around the same block. You're gonna be stuck in one
Right.
perspective. But
Right, because
to
some
try,
people even argue that liberals and leftists are
yeah,
Uh,
different and all of that.
uh-huh.
yeah,
So when I say leftist, I include the liberals
yes,
because I'm talking about the entire spectrum, you know.
So it's Democrat, liberal, leftist. It's like that's the degrees on the spectrum to the left.
Yeah,
conservative, Republican,
That's
and
the
all the
right.
many others in between.
That's
Yeah,
that's
I
the
know,
right,
I
that's
yeah.
know.
the
Yeah,
right.
no, I know,
Conservative, and then
I'm like,
libertarian is at the end. The libertarians are at the very end of the right, right? Or are they before?
libertarians.
Yeah,
I'm still thinking that that's still more on the
libertarians
other side.
are on the right because they
Want to
are
liberate
more.
everything.
Yeah, but they're on the right because of the what is it, laissez-faire
I would
beliefs
say
of like they don't want
libertarians
their
are
hands
like
and they don't want the
the,
government's hands in their business, and
Yeah.
but they're like strong conservatives is how
I would
it was
say libertarians
portrayed.
are like honest conservatives. When I say honest conservatives, I mean like, for example, uh, I would consider Tommy Lahren to be sort of a libertarian because she made the claim that she said she was against laws against abortion, right?
Hmm.
Laws, anti-abortion laws, uh, and even though she's supposed to be conservative, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
her reasoning was that if you really believe in small government as a conservative, then you should be against these laws because you should be against government overreach, right?
Yeah.
And all of these laws that they're making in all of these states that are anti-abortion laws, uh, or pro-life laws, as they call them, right? I prefer to call it as it is, anti-abortion laws, right? Yeah, and that is a libertarian argument when she said, because libertarians are about individual rights, small government, and she was fired for making that statement, right? Because a lot of the conservatives are becoming more and more right-leaning, meaning more and more fascist, right? To the
Gotcha.
point that they're hypocritical, where even though they believe in small government, but only if it benefits them as a
Them.
white cis
Right.
man, right?
Right.
Otherwise, they
No,
they
left,
and that's
left,
also why
left.
they make anti-trans laws, right?
No,
Because
that's
why
the
should you
right.
make those laws if you believe in small government, right?
Yeah.
Don't confuse me. I'm already bad with directions.
I'm sorry. I'm
I'm
sorry. It was
trying
just an
to
opportunity because
understand
we're talking
the
about the right, but
spectrum.
then but you were talking
It's
about
been a
the
long
right
time.
right now. But so every time you were saying right, you just kept on saying like to confirm something. I'm sorry. I was just in my head. It said left, left, left.
Oh, okay.
But
Gotcha.
yeah,
No,
no,
I
no,
was
no. You were
doing that
fine.
unconsciously. I was doing that because I was trying to process. But because it's been a long time since I really picked back up political science, like understanding um, just everybody's position, all the players in the game.
Yeah,
So I was just trying to ask because I needed to be filled in.
yeah.
I was
And
missing
again,
some gaps.
we always do because there's going to be more and more to come
Mm-hmm.
as we continue to push as a society to relabel and to add more labels upon all different identities, instances, experiences, and furthermore. But that's where,
Is there still a Green Party? Does that still exist?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think there's also a libertarian party, so but none of these parties have like any real like power or
Gotcha.
don't get that many votes.
Those were the
yeah.
buzzwords of my 20s, so I'm just trying to pick it back up.
Yeah.
You are all good. There's a lot there's so much to try to fathom
Mm-hmm.
that that's where the complacency and the
So another
comfortability
thing
of
is there
people
are
land.
leftist fascists as well. There's fascism on the left as well.
Yeah,
And so that's another form of mind control where they've literally associated, they're trying to create a mental association in the public that fascism automatically equals right wing,
Mm-hmm.
right? When in reality,
Okay.
there's fascism on the left as well.
hmm.
Interesting. Because it's all just a circle. It's not a
Yeah.
spectrum. It's a sphere.
Yeah, it's a sphere.
It's a sphere.
No, it's
Okay.
supposed to be a timeline. It
It's
continues
a
on and on and
philosopher.
on and on and on. But guess what? It is definitely not a timeline because if history repeats itself, how can it be on the timeline? That's why it has to be cyclical. Because if something is going to repeat, that's what we call
Right.
a cycle. We don't just
Right.
call it a timeline. This is just a line in time where this was going on and this is going on.
Right.
I'm not saying, of course, that can happen on a timeline, but realistically, within nature, if you look, for me, when it comes to talking about credibility and all of this stuff and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and of course, saying scientific method and et cetera, et cetera. A lot of this stuff that we've learned and we're speaking about, but now finding many different ways to explain and talk about it, our ancestors have already spoken and talked about a lot of these topics already.
Right.
They even have
Same
more further knowledge
conversation.
than we do on how these topics actually work. And part of it is because they learned it from their natural teacher, which is not only just life, Mother Nature, and being out there, but literally through the just living on the land. And some people forget about how important a lot of the processes, especially grounding, is.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell. Like I say, I can't tell you, but I will tell you that it provides you with a really deep perspective of really understanding what is going on and what's happening around in your surroundings. And you pick up information just from out of the nowhere, and then go and try to confirm that information. And guess what? You find out more information about that. And you're like, wow, that actually really was a thing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
ancestors been knew that.
Mm-hmm.
They've went through and experienced all of that. They know about this stuff,
Take
but
take
now
them shoes off.
of course, there's a process and a proper way on how to do it so that you can get the download correctly. But again, adding in all these particular layers to try to fully understand, understand all of that is coming at us. It's getting to that point too where we won't even be able to understand 1% of all the information and knowledge that's thrown out there to us. But I would rather have a point percentage of that versus nothing at all, because we are fighting an uphill battle. But at the end of the day, the intention around it is, why are we doing it? And is it truly worth it to do so? Because with these isms permanently having a change on the culture, the reason why I'm saying permanently is because it's still being held on. It's going to continue to be something that's going to be added into all of our backpacks and all that's going to be there and will be there because it has happened. And even if it does disappear, it's still going to end up being there.
Right.
And if we don't get to address or don't have the conversation, let it continue to slide by. We're going to continue to be in the same spot that we're in. We're just going to be the bystander, standing at everything, saying, oh, that's super bad that's going on.
Right.
And then just still standing there.
Standing there, like, oh, that's
And
been going on
it's still
forever.
and still let
Oh,
it happen. And I'll stand right next
right,
to you, and I'm a different
right.
person, and I'm looking at you like, it's a quality. You look at that. It's like, no, you're the man. You look at that. It's like, no, because you're the Hindu. You're the Hindu. You look at it. No,
Right.
because you're the one that supposedly said that you can pick that up and run with it. You go do that. And it's like, okay, we're going to continue to point on the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And I did also like what Kundan talked about even before then, we was talking about the quote of literally when one person's, which we standing for a group of folks at a point in time, and if we don't stand for those groups and then they come straight down to you at the end, and now there's nobody left to stand for you, we gotta understand how that all fully connects. So if we're all the bystanders just staring at the stuff, the situation is going to continue, and this culture that we are calling, especially within the Western culture, because we're not talking about Eastern anywhere else at this point right now, we're going to continue to just let this culture burn. It's right now in a dumpster fire for sure, but everybody's looking around the dumpster fire just like, oh, look, it is hot.
Everyone
Are
has
you
their
gonna put
phone
out
out
the
taking
fire?
pictures of
Yeah.
it.
Take that is such a great depiction. Yes, they're
No,
actually
that's what
doing
we're
a whole
doing.
video,
We're
and it's just
actually
like,
just
yeah, oh, I'm over here. Look,
letting it
it's
go.
burning. Look at Western society is burning. It's like, hey, go
The
put out the
smoke
fire.
is going.
Be like, nah, I'm live streaming right now. Like, no, like somebody
Put
put
it
out the
out.
fire. Yo,
Don't
somebody
put
put
it
out the fire.
out. Don't
Like,
put it
like
out.
no. And don't
It's a
put it
great
out
shot.
because guess what? If you try to put it out, you're misogynist for trying to put it out because you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to hate the fact that because a woman can't do it, you're not supposed to do that. Your role is not supposed to be like that as a man. I know it's sounding, of course, satirish, but
No.
look it.
Yeah, but that's what's happening. Like, again, bringing it back to TikTok. Like, that's why I have to limit myself on how long I can be on that app.
Yes.
Because at first I
Lee,
didn't
you
even
are
want this app.
killing it with these
I didn't
comments.
even want it. But I ended up getting one, and now I'm in it. And now, like, I am invested because I'm not gonna lie, I like juicy drama. I'm here for it, the shenanigans. But when it gets repetitive, when
Yeah.
it gets repetitive and it's the same arguments, it's the same thing being said by just a different face, it's like, okay, there's no new information being added to this tea. The tea is cold. We need to move on to something else. Or somebody solve the problem, you know. Um, it's literally where we're at. It's literally where we're at.
Yeah.
Look at my struggle. Look at my struggle. Oh, well, I understand you're struggling over there, but my struggle comes first. It's just ah
It's oppression Olympics.
ah. It's
Exactly. And
frustrating. It's like two things can be true at once. Three things can be true at once. It all can be true all at once.
yes.
It's not, give me the attention for my cause. Like, remember back in the 2000s when we did those those bracelets for the different illnesses, like the
Oh,
different
I love
it was like the
boobies
pink
and
one.
things stuff.
Right, and like
Oh,
every illness had a band associated with it, because I think it was breast cancer started the trend. And
yeah,
then, like, oh well, look at lupus over here. When I found out about mine, it was like, oh, MS, everybody wear orange. So then you
yeah,
have like all these different bands. What happened to that? What
yeah,
happened to showing that you can support and be involved in simultaneous like issues? Now it's
yes,
like, oh, why do you have the blue band? Like, I feel like that's the energy. Is why do you have the blue band? It's all about the pink band.
yeah. And then that is where the regression is going. So the regression of
Right.
critically thinking about, these issues and being able to, like I said, I know they say you shouldn't agree to disagree, but I still say please, because if you are really open to just going into the conversations or the reasonings to figure this stuff out, and you come out being like, you know what, I may not agree with that, but I can see where you're coming from now and where you should shed that light. Because what ends up happening is that opens up the conversation for, okay, we may not agree on this, but all right, if we had this situation go down, where can we stand together? So we start to find more of the common ground to know where we can stand together, so that even when we had this issue going on, the Western culture is in this dumpster fire right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what are we supposed to do? Are you still going to be live streaming on TikTok while the other person down the street over there is arguing at Jose for holding the hose, and he's not supposed to be spraying the hose because he doesn't have enough of the manpower to do it because he doesn't identify as this? Where are we going to be like, cut this here, let's get here all together and work on this, and then look, see how we can all work on this together? All right, now who's having more of the struggles right now? All right, so we got something going on more with when it comes to the Hinduphobia. All right, so what are we going to do about this all together, y'all? Okay, figure and manage there. You see how we can come together and do that and still end up still being someone else, and to a point where, again, the intention is actually to help. It's not to become this, of course, this savior of this particular group at a certain point in time. But because we have these isms, again, and how it compiles together, people will get lost in doing that, and then they'll also lose the interest in, okay, where's the benefit for me of helping you? Because I don't look like you, I don't identify all of everything with you, so why should I even be doing this in the first place? So it's like, at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. But that's why we have people, and I'm gonna go back and going back to the roles. That's why people are put in certain places to be able to do what they can for certain things, is because those people are able to still keep the focus and the why perfectly fit together, not even perfectly, but very closely fit. So then when there starts to become a lot of pulling and tugging, it's not going to be easily broken. And that's when they say, of course, when it comes to any type of organizations that you're in, that for it to be a thriving organization, not only just being able to just have one person as the head, but when the head's not there no more, I should still be able to, the organization should still be able to function as is, because everybody still knows the plays and the roles of what they're supposed to be doing. But at any moment in time, anybody can step in and be the quote unquote head, and it can still run as smoothly as possible. But that's what's happening. We're seeing it as, I'm an individual part. They're the only individual person that's going to only do that. So when they leave, okay, now what do we do? Versus, we played this role, we've shared, okay, if this ever happens, this is how you can step into this role, still do your role, and they don't have to be somebody ultimately being the head. We are all the heads a part of this, that is also still the whole function of the body to still get this movement, ideal organization going. So it doesn't seem like the weight is only on one person. It's supposed to be collectively. I'd rather carry 1,000 pounds with 100 of y'all versus trying to carry 1,000 pounds by myself. To me, that makes logical sense, like, to do that. So with these issues, I'd rather work in collaboration. Even like I said, Black Panthers, you have other different groups and societies, all they would work in collaboration, even though it was on an issue that didn't even have to do with him. But ultimately, the funny thing is, and this is where we get back to the whole gluing and putting this together, like you were talking about earlier, Chris, is that it becomes a subsection of a part section of ABC, which then ultimately is all connected to this tree. Bars. But it really goes back and it just alludes to, even though this is not necessarily my issue, guess what? It still has an impact on something that does still have my particular, issue to come down the line. It's a human issue, or it can end up being a gender issue, a racial issue, et cetera, et cetera. It don't matter if you're not Black, you're not white, whatever particular field that you're in, it's going to link back in some way, shape, or form, because everything is connected to everything if you really look at it.
Everything is everything. But I think we've been so drenched in the brainwashing of capitalism. Literally, it comes down to incentive now. And that's the frustrating part. Because
Yes.
I would love to see a solution happen between this whole misogyny versus misandry kind of like thing. Even though in this particular case, those two things to me
Mm-hmm.
are cause and effect.
They're definitely a
Because,
symptom.
well, the cause of um, misogyny is the cause of misandry. So, because it didn't come first. It's like the chicken or the egg kind of like argument. So in this particular instance, that's how I feel. I would love to see a solution to this, but it's it's so incentivized. Like,
Yes.
what is it going to take for the red pill gentleman to step outside of their doctrine and see from a different perspective, and see the other side, and see the harm that they're causing. Because they don't feel that it is in their interest to look at the other perspective, so that's why you get their rhetoric going. So yes, you got a
So
finger.
no, I just want to add, so even with that, there are multiple different factions. The faction now that becomes the head of this stuff, which is the same thing of why I have my gripes with feminism, because the faction that has become the head and the main architect for the movement is how we lose out on the true why of what it's doing. So with the whole idea of trying to see the perspective of the red pill in that particular page, we have the folks that are the heads that are still in what we would call the red pill rage phase. So they are still raging. Guess what? That's an emotional response. They haven't got to the point where they have they have sat down with the information, what society has shown. Because really the red pill knows based off of the matrix within, it's also based off of the matrix has other different ties to gender and all different. There's so many loops within the matrix, and that's a beautiful thing about the movie,
Because
which
it's a
is
great
that
allegory.
yes, it again, and it's very fitting for any other way you want to fit it around any aspect of the isms. But what the red pill is supposed to do is it's supposed to open your eyes to the reality of what's happening in front of you slowly. So it is being able to shed back the pill of what we thought that we was previously taught was supposed to be true, and come to find out that there is actually more to the equation. So instead of saying that it was, 2 + 2 was equaling 4, but we actually came to find out that more of the equation was that 2 + 2 had divided itself by 2, then it multiplied by more of this number to then come out that actually it's a different number all in itself. That there's so many more issues layered on top of the equation for us to even get to the last product of the answer. But we keep it in that you talk about the binary of just only seeing just the 2 + 2 and only seeing the outcome, versus that 2 + 2 can have all the other multiple ones going along with it. And those are all the other perspectives and things that we can jump into to fully understand, okay, Yes, we've been taught that we only got part of the story, and we didn't even get to see all the other individual parts that could play along with it. So, to your point, yes, but for me to specifically tell you what happened with it is they're still in the red pill rage part. So it's an emotional response to I've been cheated on, I've been done wrong. So they are seen as this, you're only this, women, I hate you because you did this, this, and that. Men, this is only us, this is only us, you're supposed to move like this, so now you won't get hurt. Again, that's what happens when you're in a breakup. Your emotions are running because your emotions are telling you something is wrong. Now let's figure out what is going on. Why is that happening? So the content in itself, if you don't know how to read between the lines, truly break it down and really digest it in to get a better idea, this is just like almost like opening up your third eye. You overexpose yourself to a point that you'll go crazy. And for those folks who are in it, they overexpose themselves so much to a point that becomes they become addicted to that feeling of still being in a rage. So they're always going to keep looking for that content and not looking for the cure. They're just going to keep looking for the subscription versus the cure to it is I took the perspective. Now I understand that this is the case. Now do I still want to journey into this aspect of being in society, knowing that all of this that I knew is not what it is, especially in the relationship aspect, knowing that it changed from this to this. And likewise, again, when I speak of feminism, is there are points where, oh, I think I'm echoing on your part, Kundan. I'm sorry.
There's a little bit of echo, yeah.
Dopamine hits, right?
Let
Dopamine
me
hits. That's another.
wait. Say that again.
They're addicted to the dopamine
Yeah,
hits after
yeah, yeah.
after every video or content that they watch or read.
So I recommend therapy, and that's a
Yeah,
whole nother thing. Men in
yeah,
therapy is its own, it's not an
Yes.
ism, but it's its own fight.
Yes. And I know we've been talking about it in a roundabout way. We've said some parts and some solutions. And one of the things you even said it earlier, Chris, and I got you notes. I see you right there, notes, is being aware of limiting your time and your energy to this stuff.
Yeah.
So if you know how detrimental being on TikTok for 3 hours can be, put it down to
I
two
wish I
hours.
could only I
I'm
wish I could only be on there for
I'm
three
just saying.
hours.
I'm saying there. I mean, there's ways to do it on your phone, but you can always still go against your phone and change the settings. But that also,
Exactly.
but
On dopamine.
what it becomes is a roadblock to be like, okay, I put this lock on. Okay, now why do I keep on wanting to have more time on this app? But
Right.
being able to limit yourself on stuff, showing discipline, is one
Mm-hmm.
of at
That's
least
hard.
the.
Discipline is
But
work, and people don't want to do the work. So, like, I get it from that aspect. Like, I 100%. That's why I'm just like, yeah, I just recommend therapy, but therapy is going to require you to do the work. So,
I will be honest with you, you really need to go and search for quality therapy, because
yeah, that's
I'll
true.
I'll I'll tell you,
Yeah.
because as Kundan was saying earlier, and this is my favorite phrase right now, is to reference back to what y'all are saying because it's popping back in, is
Mm-hmm.
when we look at it from the Western aspect,
Mm-hmm.
culture is not always fully a part of the therapeutic process,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the US, where we went to colleges and the rhetoric, skills, and the knowledge that we've learned in these institutions is still whitewashed. How are you
Mm-hmm.
going to apply that to somebody who's coming from India or somebody who's coming from Burkina Faso
Mm-hmm.
to really connect back to their culture, to fully understand and let them be able to search and actually get through these traumas that's dealing with them? The
So that's
cultural
why
aspect
I
is very
don't.
important.
So even though I recommend
What's
therapy,
up,
that's
notes?
why I don't go to
What's
traditional
up? What's
therapy.
cracking?
Because I, at a younger age, I used to go to therapy a lot, but there was a disconnect, and I didn't have the resources, the tools, the understanding to piece it together, but it felt like in my spirit like something is disconnected because
Yeah.
a lot of my therapists were either older white men or older white women.
Yeah.
And here I am, inner city girl expressing, well, inner city slash suburb girl, talking about my family dynamics that have like repercussions stemming back from slavery and and all of those things, and for them to just look at me and go, well, yeah, that's not right. It may not
So
be right, but that's what I'm experiencing. So this is where you come in. What are the tools? What do I need to do? No answers. So I had to go on my own journey, and through spirituality and what I like to get into, that kind of stuff is allows for me the space to do the work that I need to with using the tools that make sense to me.
yes.
So doing the work regardless. So I say therapy as like a broad statement, but just do the work is what I really mean.
Yeah.
Like you have to sit down with yourself. Like you said, grounding is one way to do
Yeah.
it. Maybe even just connecting with, I don't know, men. That's another part of the argument that comes up a lot too, is men are social to an extent.
Oh,
What they're
for
willing
sure.
to tell their homeboys is very like limited. They don't really get the healing component because they don't really share a lot with their guy friends. And this is like, I'm making a generalization, but I mean it, take it with a grain of salt, sample sizes and
Yeah.
stuff, but generally, like, speaking, they're not really as into community as women are. And that's another thing that's coming up with, like, in research within the nursing homes and stuff.
Yeah.
Women have visitors, men tend to just end up there,
Yes.
and no one really comes to visit them. It's all because of the lack of building the community. Not saying, again,
And,
I say all, but I don't mean all.
yeah. No. And I highly agree with you. And part of the reason that's the case is, and this is where people still get mad at it, that's just a part of the nature of things. Even though I did a rap about it, is that because we've been stripped away from a lot of that, we haven't been able to tap back into that because we are all capable of a lot of those things.
So let's go
But
back to what
because,
Kundan said
yeah,
earlier. I wouldn't call that natural. That's normal.
I would.
It's normalized. It's normalized, but it's not natural because you even said they have to get tapped back in. So that's conditioning and that's normalized, but it's not natural. It's not the nature of man.
So this is so if they have to tap back in with nature, it's not natural.
No. You're saying that it is their nature that they're not into like community, or they're not communicative with creating through talking to their friends.
No,
You're
no.
saying that that's the nature of man, right?
So I'll do this. The
Okay.
nature of man in Western society, yes, that's
Uh-huh.
the case. When I'm talking about tapping back in, going back to the natural process,
Uh-huh.
that's where everybody has that particular need. The reason why I'm saying
Gotcha.
it is the natural thing because guess what? We have where we look on our foods and it can still say artificially and naturally flavored. Again, am I saying the full natural of like, oh, it started all the way back when from where we are to here we are now? No, in the natural sense of how we're calling it here in the system.
Gotcha.
So that's when I'm speaking of. I know you're saying normal in that particular sense, but it's not
It's
even. It's.
normalized
I would
behavior.
even say. I would
Yeah.
even say it's more of. I wouldn't even say to me personally. I wouldn't even say it's more of the norm that that's the case. It's more of what's projected as the norm.
Okay.
And what I
But
mean
it's
by projected as
or
the
not
norm,
happening. The communication is not happening. So it's the normalization of not communicating is what I'm
the
is what I'm
normalization of not communicating.
for, like, in the instance of what we're talking about, men and
Yeah,
communication.
it's normalized, but I think what he's saying is to go beyond that norm
Mm-hmm.
and to go to like the real nature of things. We need to go
Yeah.
before we were programmed that way. Programmed what? Programmed to be that way.
Like you cutting out a
Um,
little bit, Kundi, because you far back.
So the programming. Okay.
So
yeah.
again, in the sense of the
Very.
programming, the reason why I still like using the word natural, because I want it to become a thing where it is natural. I don't want no more of this is how it has to be the norm. Because guess what? The norm can be a lot of stuff, like you said, it's very detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
Right.
detrimental. In
Right.
all actuality, all of this stuff is happening. And the reason why I'm saying it needs to go back to the natural aspect of this stuff is because we have, and shouts out to not only Dr. Francis Cress Wellesley, but also Neely Fuller when we talk about the 9 areas of human activity. And one of those areas having to do with media. And since we're
Okay.
on this
Yeah.
social media and this medium, which
Mm-hmm.
has an impact on the mind control, the narratives are so loud that we think that's the full narrative, when in actuality that's not the case. It's even more skewed than we actually thought it was. And I'm not going to speak on my experience and say my experience, because at the end of the day it's just an opinion, because I'm
Right.
not in that particular quote unquote, if we're going to use the word norm, I'm not in that norm, because I think part of it is because of the fact that we're miseducated on this stuff. That's why it's the case.
Right.
And you can even
Right.
push back on the stuff I said earlier. It's a lot of it is because we're being miseducated on how this stuff was. That's why I say keep going back to the natural aspect of stuff, because before then, again, we were in tribes, we were in communities. We knew that this was the value. We knew that this was how naturally a society and things were supposed to move. But as we're living where we're living, things have become manufactured to a whole
Right.
sense that now the main narrative will be men don't know how to talk, women are ones that are overly emotional, men are the ones
Right.
that are the strongest of the strong, and women are the ones that are the weakest of the weak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this stuff is being done, when in actuality a lot
Mm-hmm.
more of that stuff is more balanced than we think. But in
Yeah.
some
Exactly.
aspects, when we get to that balance, what happens is, again, it goes to that subsection of this subsection, that
Right.
then the statistics is more this way, even though the fact that it's balanced.
The
So
reality.
I
Yeah.
can be a liberal, but then I can go into that small aspect of, am I more of a right leaning liberal or a left leaning liberal, like
Right.
40% to this 60% to that percentage of.
Right.
So it gets to a point that it's so skewed that when we say something is a true reality and a number of people continue to believe and say that it is a true reality, then
Right.
the other side of it is left out, and then we don't get to see it. So again, like I said, even with stuff that I've said earlier, I'm not the end all be all of knowing all this stuff. I'm still learning. I'll speak on what I can and what I know. And when that happens, that's why I like to have the different discourse, so then I can be able to see the other proper sides of this. And when we able to give ourselves that time to see the other proper sides of all of this stuff, we'll get to be like, yo, yeah, it's so much more balanced than we actually thought. But
Right.
we are literally pitting ourselves to be like, I'm the champion in this area, in this age and area, that you can't even come close to this, when that's not necessarily the case. No,
Facts.
many assimilate, yes. And again, we're still under the umbrella of capitalism and the culture. So all the isms are backing, all of the isms are backing up our claims, but then how is
Right.
that still credible to a point that that claim is the only claim that will be and will continue to always be?
Right. The narrative of what it is.
Pretty much the true nature of
Yes.
things, right? I think one of the, I think for my mentors and Joshi as well,
Yeah.
is that one of the most powerful things you can do is to talk to your pre-colonial indigenous ancestors, your ancestors before you became racialized, right? In a racist colonial system, right? So, and some people may need to go much further back, right? Like white people, they need to go back at least 3,000 years. They can't be talking to their recent ancestors. right? They need to go back to before Roman times, right? Because before they were white, they were European, but before they were European, they were indigenous. They were like the Druids or the Sami,
The Druid,
right? The
yeah,
Druids, for example, were
yeah,
genocided, completely wiped out by the Romans, right? So they need to go all the way back there, right? Uh, Especially if you're from like the UK area, right? If your ancestors came from there, then you need to talk to the Druids. If you're from more like the Scandinavia, you might need to to your Sami ancestors, right?
Yeah.
Sami, by the way, still do exist, but many of them have been converted to Christianity, and the remaining Sami are still oppressed to this day, and they're dying out, right?
Yes.
So um, and then, people who originated from Africa, they can talk to their like Isoko or Igbo ancestors, etc., etc. Like they need to find out, right? Or even if you don't find out, just set the intention. Like I'll go back 3,000 years and go talk to ancestors from there and get their guidance on what to do, like what practices to do to heal myself and deprogram and decolonize to see the
Yes.
real truth. That's something like would recommend for everybody because what's been happening now is cultural appropriation is so like systemic and pervasive
Yes.
that racialized people, like colonized people, like black and brown people ourselves are appropriating each other's cultures now, which doesn't help anybody, including the person appropriating. Because like if you're doing something and you don't really know what you're doing, that's gonna hurt you eventually. Even if it helps you in the short term and you think it's helping you, it's not like because you don't really know what you're doing. You don't have the proper guidance of the centuries of lineage of that culture
Yes.
to actually teach you how to actually do that practice.
that's
Yes.
why I want to go back to Louisiana at least one more time, and I want to
Peace, Chris.
learn.
Appreciate you.
I want to learn the closed practice of hoodoo, but the way to do it is not on your own. You have to be taught by a
Yeah.
shaman. So
And those are the proper channels. And that's where I'm really wanting to line all of this back up to is being able to reclaim those proper channels so that we can fully connect to it as close to 100% as possible. We're getting the trickles of everything. And what I mean by trickles, we're probably only, how they say, supposedly we're only tapping into 10% of our brain that's
right,
being used. It's the same thing with a lot of our cultures. That's why I'm a proponent of actually fully diving all the way into all that you can and much as you can learn about your own culture, because once you're able to do that and you come out of it, you'll come to see how really connected we fully are all together as one, and it will start to make a lot of sense. And then you'll branch off and you start being like, yo, oh, this was actually also a part of the Eastern culture on this side. Oh, there's people that look like me actually within this era in time. Okay, what is this era in time about? Okay, it learned about doing this and that, and they actually brought spices and stuff here to the U.S. or over into the motherland. For everybody, their motherland is different, but then you start to get all the pinpoints, and that's the reason why they call it world history, and they just don't call it just
like
one
files.
history. Yeah, I love it. Shouts out to the Chavez, Mr. Chavez. Much love to you. Me rest with the ancestors in the universe. Um, but that's where we can get back to those proper channels and we can really start to see how all this divisiveness is, honestly, to be very blunt, is very childish, and is more so, again, we're
Because
tapping
we're
into the fact that,
regressing.
yes, and we're tapping into the part of that supremacy part of trying to gain the power of, well, my culture was doing this all first before this, but there is a proper way and form to bring that to people and be like, I'm so glad that we were able to shed light on this first for everyone, so that then since we shed light on this, their particular culture was able to shed light on this for the first time, which then brought more light to the world overall. So I get it's cool to have the ownership of stuff. I want us to be able to own what we learn and how that helps us. But at the
Maybe.
same time, we let these isms create schisms.
Oh, I love that song.
Then we have what
Cool.
left? What do we have left?
Nothing.
I gave you $10, but you argued about that you got how I got these $10. So you pass it to the next person and said this $10 is useless. They went and got the $10, tried to do something with the $10, but they was like, nah, this is useless. They ripped it in half. And then after they ripped it in half, some way circled right back to you and you threw it in the trash. And then the next day came, the person who gave you those $10 comes back to you and say, where did the $10 go? I don't have it anymore. Why did you get rid of the $10? It wasn't worth nothing. Why did I even have to have it? And that person who's looking for the $10, that was your ancestors and your culture. Just because you didn't look deep into how that $10 can actually be of worth, you lost the sense of that worth. So when it came back to getting circled to find that worth, that $10, which is the knowledge, at least the foundation, you're even more confused than when you first started. Hopefully, if that makes sense. Again, I'm sometimes I just go into the ramble as I'm getting inspired from what y'all are
I
saying.
love the flow.
So,
I love the flow.
so,
Just let it
but
ride.
with that being said, I know there's so much in this that again I would love to keep going. And it looks like we're trying to break another record here with the timing. But
Has it been
just for
4 hours?
times, just yeah, almost 4 hours. But just for the time's sake, I want to go ahead and let's just get into just wrapping up for tonight. Last thoughts
Yeah.
on anything else being said and get ourselves up out of here. Luckily, I don't have school tomorrow, so that's why I'm kind of like a little bit more laid back and lenient with how long it's been going. No, I'm not singing the song "You're Late,"
What's
but
the word?
yeah.
Maybe about rest.
But with that being said, Kundan, to wrap up, any thoughts on today's topic, whether from the misogyny, misandry to the isms or anything?
Yeah, I think be careful of mind control. Be careful of propaganda and fake news, especially now that we have AI, voice cloning, and deep fakes. There are now entire YouTube channels. Right now, they're comedy channels with like the exact voice of Biden, Trump, and Obama, and they're speaking to each other, but that's not their, it's not them actually speaking to each other. It's AI. That's how good AI is becoming, and they really sound convincing. So, and then next we're gonna have deep fakes,
Mm-hmm.
and fake news is already a problem. So, and also don't feel any pressure to take a stand whenever you see posts and uh, social media. Resist the urge to comment. Sometimes I have to do that myself. I'm seeing way too much propaganda on Instagram these days, and it's like I really have to exercise self-control and not like comment. I might private message a few people in the Instagram stories that are close to me, but like
Yes.
publicly, I've been I don't make any posts, about certain issues because I see how much propaganda there is on all sides uh, when it comes to certain issues, and it's like it's really important to pause and reflect and see like all the different sides, all the different arguments being made,
Yeah.
uh, and to really see like which one are even facts, right? Because we literally live in a post-truth world where there is so much propaganda, so much misinformation. It's really almost impossible to like discover what is the truth, what is the facts nowadays, especially with certain issues, right?
Yeah.
So we really have to increase our discernment skills. And all of this propaganda is for mind control. That is why it exists. So especially with things that are happening in foreign countries, right? It's such a distraction and a derailment. I know the argument is, oh, our tax dollars are being used, etc., etc. But
Yeah.
they're also used for, child marriage, right? Why not
Yeah.
go end child marriage, for example? Like pick something, local, like pick a cause that's local, that's national, that's within the United States, and dedicate your entire life to it. Stick to that, because there's so much. Because what's happening is like paid social media trolls are literally being paid like $50,000 to $60,000 a year at least, right?
Yeah, you
With
did speak on that.
trolling, misinformation, spreading misinformation is literally their full-time job, right? Whereas for us activists and organizers, we're doing this as part-time, right? We're
Yes.
not getting paid for this. So how are you going to compete with that unequal level of power, right? Where they're literally paid full-time. This is literally what they do now, you know. And
Mm,
also look at who's commenting, who's making the post, right? If you see a comment by somebody with no profile picture, zero followers or zero posts,
yeah.
that's probably a troll, right? So yeah, so really be discerning, like really learn about and really learn how mind control is done, like learn the mechanics of it, not so that you can do it to others, but to protect yourself. Like one of the ways mind control works is through storytelling and through this thing called nested loops or stack realities. Learn about those things too, so you can protect yourself. Learn about memes and mimetic control, like things like the American Dream. That's a meme. That's a mimetic tool for mind control.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think Instagram is trying to be weird with us and trying to get these sounds out because what we've been talking about. Um, but thank you for that, Kundan. Thank you. Chris, what about you? What's your wrap up
My
and thoughts on
final
the
thoughts.
convo? Yes.
So I'm just gonna reiterate what I've been saying this whole time because I think it's like
Yes.
important. Um, Context matters. Uh,
Yes.
if you don't know what you're talking about, maybe ask, maybe learn um, before being so vocal. Um, Thank you, Beef. I am glowing. Alrighty, and the next part is misogyny and misandry are, basically cause and effect factors. Look into historical context. You can go as far back as like how you mentioned earlier about how the Sumerians, you can use that as, a reference, or even if you're just trying to figure out where we got to right now in this day and age, you can track the trail, just go back 1 decade at a time, and eventually you'll lead to the beginning of it here in
Yes.
in America, on this scale, and how it influenced other places, and how other places, and when I say places, I mean like European countries, have influenced and affected it. How isms currently permanently change the culture. They're always going to change the culture because, like we mentioned earlier, the culture is driven by these schisms. The
Yes.
schisms are, I said schisms, the isms, those two, but
The craze?
those two. But the isms are the driving factors. They are going to be what is cool, what's not cool. You know what I mean? Oh, sexism is not cool. Oh, like all that kind of stuff. It's a platform. It's an issue that people can then build a platform on, and it's gonna affect the culture. It's gonna affect the scene of our society. So that's where I'm at with today's discussion. Thank you so much for having this topic.
Yes.
I was really excited about this one, so I had to show up for this one.
And again, I'm glad you did because it's we need multitude of perspectives. We need feminine, masculine, all the lens that we want to put in all
All
together.
the lens.
That all the lens, the Jeremy lens, all the lens that we're going to end up being. Lend me a hand, all of this stuff. You had to lend me a hand so we can figure it
Ashley
out.
Lynn.
But yeah, all of this,
Ashley Lynn.
yeah. What all the funny jokes aside, I appreciate you as well as appreciate Kundan, appreciate Lee,
Flynn. Thank
everybody
you.
that's
That
all
was
there,
great.
the Flins as well too. Yes, I want to appreciate all of y'all because it's important that we have this stuff, but at the same time, it's a beautiful thing when we can come together and have these discussions and build upon a foundation that is super heavy, but peeling back the layers so that we can get more clarity behind. So thank y'all for that. And thank y'all for your time. I do have something for you and Kundan at the end. I'm gonna ask after we get off. I got a questions for y'all. It's nothing too crazy, but it's to get ready for the
After
inevitable,
show?
which I'll speak on in a bit. No, it's not gonna be. I'm not gonna do
Oh,
an after show, but
um,
you'll see what I'm talking
you
about.
said the
But
inevitable. I got sad. Okay.
no, I'll have one more after show before it gets to the last official episode. But
Okay.
appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for sharing, giving into the perspectives, the pushbacks, the agreements, all of that stuff it's needed for growth because we don't get comfortable. We don't grow within comfortability. It's when the uncomfortability comes, that's where the growth really truly comes, the struggle. So with that being said, y'all, to wrap up for tonight, when it comes to current events and reading and, and reading articles, information, it's important that you stay aware. It is important that you take your time to actually read between the lines and stay fully informed because proper preparation prevents poor performance. And do so for those around you, your loved ones, families, so that y'all can be ready. Now, when it comes to misogyny versus misandry, the look of it all is a symptom of an overarching, deeper rooted issue. And once we are able to come to the table and really speak about why we feel this way, why there's a hatred of men, why there's a hatred of women, culturally, where is that stemming from? We are able to have a channel, have a place and a space to explore these things so that then at the same time we are elevating our consciousness. We are also coming to more reasonings and understandings of why we may feel those ways, either personal or objective, but we start to create a space so that then we grow and actually create a whole community based around a lot of this stuff. So it's important we talk about it. So is there misogyny? Yes, there is. Is there misandry? Of course there is. Is there night and day? Of course there is. If y'all know about Hermetic principles, you know what I'm going to be talking about, the polarities of stuff. But, and lastly, when it comes to how isms permanently change the culture, I agree with Chris on this. It does, and it's going to continue to do that because it's man-made. That's what isms are. We are continually creating, we are continually evolving. But what happens is, as we are evolving, we are losing a sense of ourselves if we are not noting this, we're not keeping the conversations and things moving. There is a point to advancement and improvement. We can advance across the board because we are in different boxes and we are in different labels, but how much of that did it help us improve? So how much did that privilege already help us improve? In some instances, it just got us to go, instead of on step 10, we're all the way up to step 100. We skipped out on all the other 90 steps just because of the fact that that was the privilege we had because we look like this and that. It didn't come with any type of improvement. There was no hard work put there. So with the isms, it creates such a cricket mindset and view on stuff to a point where We feel that that's how it's already supposed to be, and that's all that there is, and that's all it's going to be, when that's not the case. So if we don't peel back on these isms, we don't speak about what really is needed, this change will continue to happen, and it will permanently damage our outlook and our improvement into the future. But with that being said, y'all, and all the funniness in the comments, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. This has been a long one, y'all. For those still wondering, the last episode for What's the Word in total for the series finale is going to be December 27th. Make sure that you are here December 27th, because it's going to be a mixture of things, as well as it's going to be a collection of some trivia facts of the whole series in total, funny reminders of episodes. I'm gonna run through stuff, talk about this stuff. We're gonna have a good time. So y'all make sure y'all keep that at least on your calendar. If you don't see any other show from today, December 27th is the one that you definitely want to make sure that you're on, because that's gonna be it. And it's not gonna be no more of, hey, well, A.D.V.I.S.S, what about bring it? No, once it says season finale, that's it. We're gonna move on. And guess what? These conversations that we had is going to continue, because it doesn't have to stop with me. It continues. We've talked it here. It continues on. It don't mean just because I'm the CEO of What's the Word Wednesday that there's not going to still be a What's the Word. We always going to be asking what's the word, day in, day out. But with that being said, much love to y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. Shouts out to the folks who was here, as well as who going to be watching this later. Check us out, Instagram, YouTube, and all other different social medias. A.D.V.I.S. Music, as well as A.D.V.I.S. Speaks on YouTube. Please check it out. Check out Chris. All the folks that is on here. We love y'all. We'll see y'all next time for another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. Stay aware. Keep your pace. Don't be misogynistic or misogynistic. I'm just playing. But we love y'all. Peace.
Bye.